Chapter 40-43. Don't be fooled by Shanghai Tianhua's gentle appearance at the moment. According to Morong Zhen's report, Lin Yi was currently a serious suspect in the kidnapping of Shanghai Laner. If there was no solid evidence, no matter how highly Shanghai Tianhua regarded Lin Yi, it was impossible for him to easily let go of this newcomer, who was suspected of kidnapping his only granddaughter. There was only one thing that Shanghai Tianhua was most concerned about, and that was how to find his precious granddaughter. This was the reason why he condescended to see Lin Yi. Otherwise, as the dignified soaring pavilion master, it was impossible for him to appear in such a place. Actually, disciple already knows where little senior sister is. Lin Yi said slowly. Oh. Shangguan Tianhua was startled. No matter what method Lin Yi used to prove his innocence, it wouldn't be surprising at all. The fact that he knew Shangguan Lan Er's location was rather surprising. If Pavilion Master Shangguan doesn't mind, disciple can lead the way, but you have to let me out first. Lin Yi said with a burning gaze. Shanghai Tianhua took a deep look at Lin Yi and nodded. Well, this old man will do as you wish. If it was someone else, even if it was Su Yuanzheng, a big shot in the Elders Guild, he would not dare to pat his chest and say that he could easily take Lin Yi out of here. After all, this was Ramjia's territory. Without Ramjia's approval, no one could take anyone away. However, Shangguan Tianhua was not one of them. Not only was he the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, he was also the one who had helped and guided Gong Yangjia. If there was anyone in the three great pavilions who could intimidate Gong Yangjia, he, Shangguan Tianhua, would definitely be at the top of the list. Sure enough, with a simple order from Shanghai Tianhua, Ramjia did not have any objections and directly nodded to do as he was told. From being locked in the dungeon, it had only been a short 2 hours since he saw the light of day again, but Lin Yi felt as if a lifetime had passed. If it weren't for Shanghai Tianhua, and if Ramjia hadn't ignored him from the beginning to the end, he would have been exhausted to death in the dark dungeon that was isolated from the world. That was not an impossibility. Fortunately, he finally came out. Lin Yi stretched himself. It hasn't been too long. Hopefully, Shanghai Laner is still alive and well. How do we go? Shangguan Tianhua asked from behind. Even with his calmness as the top boss of the three great pavilions, in the face of his precious granddaughter's safety, he had to be calm. He could not help but feel a little worried. Lin Yi looked around before his gaze fell on a flying spirit beast from the law enforcement hall in the distance. He pursed his lips and said, "That place is a little far. We need it to give us a ride." Okay. Shangguan Tianhua immediately led Lin Yi, and the two of them stepped on the flying spirit beast. Without saying a word, they soared into the sky, leaving the law enforcement hall experts looking at each other. Lin Yi was an important suspect, and without the protection of the enforcement hall's experts, he was taken away by Shangguan Tianhua just like that. That was clearly illogical. However, the other party was the master of the Soaring Pavilion, and if he wanted to do something, even the hall master Gong Yangjia had no choice but to obey. If they, the underlings, were to point fingers, or even want to intervene, they would simply be courting death. However, the one who was in trouble was Shanghai Laner. Speaking of which, it was also Shanghai Tianhua's family affairs. Although he was suspected of exceeding his authority by doing so, he could not be blamed. While the law enforcement hall experts watched the two of them leave, this scene also fell into the eyes of Morong Zhen. As an important informant and witness, she still remained in the law enforcement hall to assist in the investigation. It was just that she was not strictly restricted. Morong Zhen was suddenly shocked. She did not know why Shanghai Tianhua took Lin Yi out alone. However, judging from the direction of the flying spirit beast, it was clearly going straight to the dilapidated martial arts practice field, where she and Kong Mingming kidnapped Shanghai Laner. There was no time to think about the reason. Morong Zhen hurriedly left the law enforcement hall secretly, ran to a secluded place, and sent a message by eagle to Kong Mingming, who was far away on the other side of the North Island. Shanghai Tianhua is suspected to be able to sense Shanghai Laner's location. He has come here with Lin Yi by flying spirit beast. Let's go. Looking at the scribbled note in his hand, Kong Mingming was so scared that he almost had a heart attack. Cha Wu, who was beside him, was so scared that his face turned pale. They kidnapped Shanghai Laner, as a follow-up action of the previous rumor. They just wanted to frame Lin Yi. However, they never thought that Shanghai Tianhua, the master of Rising Sky Pavilion, would come in person. With their insignificant strength, they could not even face Lin Yi, let alone Shanghai Tianhua, a top boss with great magic power. If they were really targeted by him, they would not even know how they died. The speed of the messenger eagle is not much faster than that of the flying spirit beast. Deacon Kong, we'd better run for our lives. Otherwise we'll be doomed. Cha Wu hurriedly advised. The fear in Kong Jiaming's heart wasn't much better than Cha Wu's. Although he didn't want his meticulously planned kidnapping plan to fail just like that, his life was more important. Shangguan Tianhua and Lin Yi would arrive at the scene in the next moment, and that would be the end of him. Wait, even if we want to run, we can't just run like this. According to what I'm going to say, you should go to Shanghai Laner quickly and shout like this. And then run. Kong Mingming suddenly said. At this point, he absolutely did not dare to take Shanghai Laner away. What if Morong Zhen was right, and the other party could sense Shanghai Laner's location? However, Kong Mingming still had some tricks up his sleeve. Even if he couldn't take Shanghai Laner away, he could still shout a few words to confuse them. Although Cha Wu was extremely reluctant, he did not dare to argue with Kong Mingming at this time. The more he delayed, the more dangerous it would be. He could only bite the bullet and do as he was told. Cha Wu hurriedly ran to the broken martial arts field. He suppressed the fear in his heart and said to Miss Shanghai Laner in a low voice, Miss Shangguan, the boss said that he kidnapped you this time to show a hero saving the beauty. So later, he will come to save you personally, so that he can show off in front of your grandfather. Don't be fooled by him. This is all directed by him. Shanghai Laner raised her eyelids, and her long eyelashes suddenly blinked twice. She said, What do you mean? I don't understand. It means that Boss Lin Yi will come to save you later, but in fact, he is pretending. He wants to show a hero saving the beauty. Cha Wu explained helplessly. Save me? Then why is he pretending? Shanghai Laner asked curiously. Cha Wu was going crazy at this moment. Time was running out, and this lady's brain seemed to be not bright enough to understand him. He could only shout. Anyway, you just need to remember that Lin Yi is a liar. Chapter 40-44. Cha Wu left helplessly. He didn't know if Shanghai Laner really understood what he said. Anyway, after meeting with Kong Mingming, the two of them could no longer care about anything else, and immediately fled in embarrassment. Not long after the two of them escaped, Shanghai Tianhua and Lin Yi immediately descended from the sky. If Kong Mingming dilly-dallied any longer, they would really not be able to escape. With Shanghai Tianhua's powerful perception, he had already locked the position of his precious granddaughter in the sky. The two of them went straight into the broken martial arts arena. When Shanghai Laner saw this, she immediately said happily, Grandpa, junior brother, you finally came to save me. Although she was kidnapped this time, she did not suffer any substantial pain from beginning to end. She could also see that these kidnappers had ulterior motives, and did not dare to really hurt her. But after all, she was in a crisis. Especially at the beginning, she was still quite frightened. Otherwise, Lin Yi would not have been able to sense her position through the mother-child necklace. Seeing that Shanghai Laner was not injured, Shanghai Tianhua's originally hanging heart finally fell to the ground. He turned to Lin Yi and asked curiously, How do you know Laner's position? Looking at the three pavilions of the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua's strength could be said to be at the peak, and the exploration range of his divine awareness was also extremely wide. But Shanghai Laner was kidnapped so far away that even he could not lock her position. On the other side, Lin Yi untied the rope made of sea beast tendons on Shanghai Laner's body. He smiled slightly and said, I happened to cast 2 mother-child necklaces a few days ago, and one of them was given to senior sister apprentice. When there is a crisis, there will be a genuine qi fluctuation, so I know. When Shanghai Tianhua heard this, he was amazed and said, I have heard that you are an alchemist before, but I didn't expect that you are also a blacksmith. As a newcomer, You can be so versatile. You are a rare genius in the 3 pavilions. Pavilion Master Shangguan is overpraising me. I only know a little about this. Lenny smiled reservedly. You're neither arrogant nor rash. That's rare. Blacksmiths are rarely seen in our soaring sky pavilion. To be able to forge such a mystical necklace is even rarer. Shangguan Tianhua nodded approvingly, and then suddenly asked with a playful expression. But I heard that this mother-child necklace has always been a gift between lovers. Why did you give it to little Honor? This. Lenny was embarrassed and didn't know what to say. If he said that he didn't have any thoughts towards this senior sister of his, then he was clearly deceiving himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given her a mother-child necklace. However, if one were to say that he was really interested in Shangguan Laner, that was not entirely the case. It was just that he had a good impression of her in his heart, and they had a good friendship. At this time, Shangguan Laner stood up and hugged Shangguan Tianhua's arm and said, "I, Grandpa, little junior brother, and I have a deep sibling relationship. It's much closer than lovers. We're friends of life and death." When Shangguan Tianhua heard this, he immediately laughed heartily. He laughed heartily. Haha, good. However, while laughing, Shangguan Tianhua clearly looked at Lin Yi with a deep meaning. Some words. He just didn't say it out loud. Seeing this, Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Looking at the expression of this pavilion master Shangguan, it seemed that he had been misunderstood. However, this kind of thing couldn't be explained face to face. Maybe he would think that the explanation was a cover-up, and it would become more and more chaotic, so he could only remain silent. Little Honor, did you see the appearance of those robbers who kidnapped you? Shangguan Tianhua asked. Shangguan Laner shook her head. No, they were all in black, and their faces were covered tightly. I couldn't see what they looked like at all. Although she said so, she could still guess the identity of the other party from the previous strange words and deeds of these people. But she didn't want to tell Shangguan Tianhua. After all, there would be no suspense, and it would not be fun at all. Well, it seems that the follow-up arrest can only be handed over to the law enforcement hall. However, little Honor, you have to remember, you can't run around like this in the future, okay? This time, fortunately, Lenny brought me here in time, and nothing serious happened. Next time, you won't be so lucky. Shangguan Tianhua reprimanded with a straight face. I know. This time, if it weren't for Little White running out to steal wine to drink, I wouldn't have been so easily kidnapped by them. Shangguan Laner pouted. When she said this, the loud snoring of the little curly bear came from the corner. The 3 of them were stunned for a moment, and then they laughed at the same time. After making a fuss for a long time, it turned out that the little curly bear, the Fuse, was still drunk and sleeping. From the beginning to the end, he didn't know about the kidnapping at all. When he woke up, everything was over. It was really a dumb bear's dumb luck. Facing this little fellow, they really didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. Shangguan Tianhua shook his head helplessly. Seeing that there was no one around, it was meaningless to continue to stay here. He immediately called Lin Yi and Shangguan Laner to board the flying spiritual beast and set off to return to the 3 major pavilions. The return of Shangguan Tianhua and the other 2 immediately caused a sensation in the law enforcement hall. Since Shangguan Laner had returned unscathed and could testify that Lin Yi wasn't the culprit who kidnapped her, the suspicion on Lin Yi was naturally cleared. There was no need for him to return to that dark and gloomy dungeon. On the contrary, Morong Zhen, the person who came forward to report him, was going to get into big trouble this time. Framing Lin Yi was only a small matter, but providing false information to mislead the law enforcement hall was the real problem. If they really wanted to investigate, even if Morong Zhen didn't die this time, she would at least lose a layer of skin. She went for wool and came home shorn. No matter how she tried to exonerate herself with flowery words, she was going to be the scapegoat anyway. Of course, investigating Morong Zhen was the law enforcement hall's business. It had nothing to do with Lin Yi. If he wanted to take revenge, he could only do it in private. It was purely a personal grudge. As for reporting to the law enforcement hall, he had no interest in that. Firstly, there was no evidence. Secondly, Lin Yi didn't want to be too close to the people of the law enforcement hall. He followed Shanghai Tianhua out of the law enforcement hall. Before they parted, Shanghai Tianhua suddenly stopped and turned to Lin Yi. He said, "This time I owe you another favor. In the future, if you need anything, you can come to the Soaring Sky Pavilion directly to find me." After that, Shanghai Tianhua took the reluctant Shangguan Laner and the little curly bear and quickly disappeared from sight, leaving Lin Yi alone in a daze. In the three great pavilions of the northern island, Shangguan Tianhua's favor was a priceless treasure that no amount of spiritual jade could buy. If it were anyone else who had heard his promise, they would have been so excited that they would have forgotten themselves. Chapter 40-45. Does she really think highly of me? Or is she hinting to me that this thing is just treated as a favor, and not to think too much, so that I can keep a distance from Shangguan Laner in the future? No one could give Lin Yi an answer to this question. He could only suppress it in his heart for the time being, and leave it to the future to prove it. At present, there was only one thing that needed his attention most, and that was the casting plan that was already on the bow. On the other hand, after the kidnapping incident, Shanghai Laner was directly grounded after being taken home by Shanghai Tianhua, and even the little curly bear was strictly ordered not to step out of the house. 2. 3. W. X. With this lesson, no matter how hard Shanghai Laner racked her brains, she couldn't find an excuse to go out in a short time. However, what made Shanghai Tianhua quite helpless was that even if she was locked up at home, she couldn't expect Shanghai Laner to concentrate on her cultivation. In addition to playing with the little curly bear, she also had to take time to write letters to her best friend outside the North Island. She was very busy. Her best friend was the daughter of the owner of West Island, Ning Xuefei. Birds of a feather flock together. Except for an extremely special case like Lin Yi, with Shanghai Laner's family background, even if she didn't have the temper and airs of a rich lady, ordinary people were destined not to be her close friends. They were at different levels, and they couldn't talk to each other as equals. Naturally, there was no pure friendship, and in the whole three pavilions of North Island, there were very few people whose family background could be compared with that of Shanghai Laner. If the target was further locked on girls of the same age, it would be even more difficult to find them. Therefore, almost all of Shanghai Laner's best friends were on the outer island, and Ning Xuefei was the closest one among them. Different from North Island, West Island was not only a gathering place for female cultivators, but it still retained the legacy of the ancient matriarchal clan, and everything was decided by women. However, these female cultivators were very powerful, and they were not any weaker than the forces of the other sub-islands. Ning Xuefei's mother was the island lord of West Island. In the 5 great islands of heaven rank, powerhouses came forth in large numbers, and experts were as numerous as the clouds. Being able to become the master of an island, even if it wasn't the middle island, meant that she was one of the few experts of the 5 great islands of heaven rank. Moreover, she was a woman, yet she was able to become an overlord. The difficulty of this could be imagined. In the ancient secular world, this island master of West Island was comparable to the Empress Wu Zetian, a legendary existence revered by countless people. Strictly speaking, Ning Xuefei's background was even more powerful than Shanghai Laner's. Of course, the main reason why the two of them could become best friends was that their personalities were compatible. As for his family background, they didn't care about it at all. A while ago, Ning Xuefei wrote a letter saying that she was going to the far North Island to attend the auction. Shanghai Laner thought that she would come to the North Island to play with her. However, her best friend didn't come, and she always felt regretful. This time, in reply to Ning Xuefei's letter, Shanghai Laner told her all the depressing things that had happened to her recently, from the birthday party to the kidnapping this time. She said all of them in one go. Anyway, she was grounded at home and had nothing to do, so she simply shared them with her best friend. It was really hard for her, a young lady who claimed that she couldn't write. After a whole day of writing, she wrote a lot of papers, and finally roughly said all these things. She sent them out unwillingly. A few days later, Shanghai Laner received Ning Xuefei's reply, and the content of the letter made her jump with joy. In the letter, Ning Xuefei said that she had gotten her mother's permission to come to the North Island to play with her. Like Shanghai Laner, Ning Xuefei had very few best friends. Now, after hearing all the things that had happened to Shanghai Laner, as her best friend, she naturally had to come and comfort her. As for the research of the automatic casting mechanism, naturally, her other best friend, Han Jingjing, would take over. Because she was grounded at home by her grandfather, Shanghai Laner was now depressed. But now, her mood was finally lifted again. Middle Island Alchemy Hall. Recently, there were two things that attracted the most attention in Alchemy Hall. One was the death of Zheng Tianjia, and the other was the Minghun between Tian Chan and Zheng Tianjia. She was at the age of a flower, and wearing a charming bride's dress. Every girl who loved to dream would think of such a scene many times. Even a cultivator who was infinitely close to becoming an extraordinary immortal would probably have the same thought at this time. They would only envy the Mandarin ducks, not the immortals. However, what if the Mr. Right in front of her was a cold corpse? With the contrast of Zheng Tianjia's cold corpse, the more beautiful Tian Chan was, the more pitiful she looked in the eyes of others. Even those who did not have much of a relationship with her could not help but sigh for her. If it were any other girl, no matter how bad the other party was, people would at most say that it was a flower stuck in a pile of cow dung. But Tian Chan, the Mr. Right, was not even comparable to a pile of cow dung in the eyes of ordinary people. However, this was only the opinion of others. Tian Chan was very satisfied with this. Although the Minghun with a dead person sounded very horrifying, as Zheng Tianjia's widow, Tian Chan had a lot of benefits. Not only would there not be anyone who did not have eyes to harass her, but her status in the alchemy hall would also rise. Without so many complicated cultivation tasks, and the need to participate in the alchemy hall's routine cultivation, compared to before the Minghun, Tian Chan's life was much more peaceful. Deep in the core of the alchemy hall, there was an extremely special room. Inside lived a strange patient. Originally, with Tian Chan's identity as a normal disciple, she naturally could not enter easily. But now, whenever she was free, she would come to visit this person. "Grandfather, how are you feeling today?" Tian Chan appeared at the door of the room again, and greeted respectfully with a smile. A slightly hoarse voice quickly came from inside the room. "I am not your grandfather. I have no relationship with the Tian family in the secular world. You do not have to purposely curry favor with me. I am now a cripple. No matter how much you try to curry favor with me, it is useless. Zheng Dongjue will not listen to me. If you want me to help you break off the engagement, you better give up." Tian Chan smiled slightly and said, "Grandfather, no matter what, you are Chan'er's elder. Don't talk about elder. I am not your elder. It is hard to say whose seniority is between the two of us. Who knows, you might even be my sister," the hoarse voice said impatiently. Chapter 40-46. This person was actually the once famous Vice Island Master of Heavenly Stage Island. He was the legendary figure who had gone mad, because he had cultivated the creation battle art. His meridians had been severed, and he was Tian Xing. Tracing back to their ancestry, the Will of Heaven and Tian Chan were actually from the same lineage, but 1,000 years ago, the Will of Heaven had used a special method to move to Heaven-class Island by chance. However, they had always lived in a practitioner's tribe, and there had never been any outstanding practitioners in their family. The lifespan of the tribesmen was similar to that of ordinary people, so it was hard to calculate the seniority. According to what the Will of Heaven said, perhaps Tian Chan's seniority might really be higher than his. But with his age, it was natural for Tian Chan to call him senior. The Will of Heaven had a close personal relationship with Zhang Liju, and after he went insane, he had been recuperating in the Elixir Hall. But it didn't have much effect. The meridians in his body had long been broken into hundreds and thousands of pieces, and it was already a miracle that he was still alive. If he wanted to reconnect them, even with Zhang Liju's miraculous medical skills, he wouldn't be able to do it. "I'm not the Vice Island Master. Do you think a lunatic like me would believe me if I said I was the Vice Island Master? You don't have to think about climbing up to the rich and powerful. And don't try to climb up to me, your relative. It's useless anyway. It's not as prestigious as Zheng Dongjue's granddaughter-in-law. Alright, leave the medicine there. You can leave. As usual, the Will of Heaven didn't open the door and directly asked him to leave. The Will of Heaven used to be the Vice-Island Master of Heaven-class island, a pinnacle figure who looked down on all living beings. But that was all in the past. Now, he was just a cripple who couldn't even take care of himself. With his strange and crazy temper, no one was willing to serve him, and they didn't even bother to look at him. But Tian-chan didn't show any displeasure, and shook her head helplessly. Placing the medicine at the door, she respectfully bowed and said, "Alright, Chan'er will come visit Senior in a few days. Chan'er will take her leave first." In the room, the disheveled The Will of Heaven had a strange and helpless look in his turbid eyes when he heard this. No matter how crazy he was, a person's heart was still made of flesh and blood, especially when he was in his most miserable and dejected state. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Whether Tian-chan treated him sincerely or not, could he really not see it at all? What was the use of seeing through him? He was just a cripple with broken meridians. If he was thrown on the street, he wouldn't even be as good as a beggar. What could he do? The room was silent for a long time. Suddenly, the crazy laughter of the Will of Heaven rang out again. Coming out of the room of the Will of Heaven, Tian-chan couldn't help but feel a bit worried. She came to the heavenly island and was able to see her blood-related elders. This was such a blessing, but the current state of the Will of Heaven really made her unable to feel happy. She hadn't walked 2 steps when a young man in white suddenly walked over from the corridor. After seeing Tian-chan, his eyes suddenly lit up and he greeted with a smile. "Sister-in-law, you went to see Elder Heaven again." Seeing this person, Tian-chan's eyes turned cold. A trace of disgust flashed across her face as she replied coldly, "Yes." This young man in white was called Zheng Tianchu. He was Zheng Tianjia's cousin. In terms of status, Tian-chan still had to call him brother-in-law. Zheng Tianjia, who had high hopes on him, died tragically halfway. There were rumors in the streets that Zheng Dongjue had already begun to shift his attention to Zheng Tianchu. He intended to train him to replace Zheng Tianjia's original position and become the person in charge of the Zheng family in the future. In terms of strength, Zheng Tianchu and Zheng Tianjia couldn't be compared at all. Although he had the halo of Zheng Dongjue's grandson, the entire Pill Hall didn't take him seriously. He could only be regarded as a small character on the edge. But now it was different. Zheng Tianchu had become Zheng Dongjue's favorite person. He immediately began to act arrogantly. Now it could be said that he was in the limelight and had the posture of becoming Zheng Tianjia's second. However, all this had nothing to do with Tian-chan. She hated the Zheng family from the bottom of her heart and didn't even want to say a word more. "Elder Heaven must have given you face again, right? Sister-in-law, your character is too virtuous. If it was someone else, they wouldn't be willing to serve a crazy old man like this. Why do you want to get angry for no reason? Why don't I accompany you the next time sister-in-law goes?" Zheng Tianchu continued to say with a smile. Tian-chan looked at him indifferently and said, "No need. If there's nothing else, I'll go back first." After saying that, Tian-chan didn't want to bother with him anymore. She directly bypassed Zheng Tianchu and left without looking back. Looking at Tian-chan's beautiful and graceful back, Zheng Tianchu couldn't help but have a trace of lust in his eyes. He pinched his chin with one hand and sneered, "Still pretending to be a chaste woman in front of me? Well, the more character a woman has, the more interesting it will be to play with her in the future. There's nothing more delicious than dumplings, and nothing more fun than, hey sister-in-law." With Tian-chan's current status as a widow, she was already a cooked duck in Zheng Tianchu's eyes. She couldn't escape from his palm at all. As long as he sat firmly in the position of the Zheng family's young master, this beautiful sister-in-law would surrender to him sooner or later. Thinking of the beauty, Zheng Tianchu couldn't help laughing. He couldn't help but praise his cousin Zheng Tianjia in his heart. It was really a good time to die. Law Enforcement Hall, North Island. Shanghai Laner came back unscathed. This time the crisis, which was obviously aimed at Lin Yi, was solved without any attack. On the contrary, Morong Zhen the informant was now in huge trouble. There were risks when she came forward rashly. When Kong Mingming asked her to report Lin Yi, she had already had this bad feeling. But at that time, Shanghai Laner didn't cooperate in every way, and Kong Mingming obviously didn't want to show up. Chao Wu, a fence-sitter, was not reliable at all. She was purely forced to bite the bullet and do it in person. Now she failed to frame Lin Yi and was hurt. The bad feeling became a reality. Lin Yi went out with Shanghai Tianhua in a carefree and easy way. Morong Zhen, the informant, became a prisoner, locked in a dirty and smelly dungeon, with no one to answer her calls. Morong Zhen couldn't help but tremble with fear when she thought of the cruel methods of the law enforcement hall. She had a guilty conscience, and she was a woman. No matter how treacherous and ruthless she was on the outside, once she was in this underground prison, where she couldn't see the light of day, it wouldn't be strange if she was scared to the point of becoming a lunatic after a long period of time. Chapter 40-47. With the existence of the soul-searching skill, lying to the law enforcement hall was simply courting death. Morong Zhen's heart sank to the bottom the moment she was captured by the powerhouses of the law enforcement hall and locked in the dungeon. She knew that she was done for this time. Even if she had the slightest bit of luck, it would only be wishful thinking. It was a matter of great importance. Although Shangguan Lan had been rescued safely, it was a terrible thing to kidnap the first young lady of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. The law enforcement hall would definitely investigate this matter to the end, and she, the suspicious informant, was a ready-made breakthrough. Finally, amidst her extreme anxiety and panic, the tragic fate that Morong Zhen had been waiting for finally arrived. The people from the law enforcement hall had come to interrogate her. Even though Morong Zhen had already prepared his words in his head, he was not confident that his words would be able to fool the people from the law enforcement hall. She silently followed the people from the law enforcement hall all the way. With every step she took, Morong Zhen felt that she was one step closer to death. The despair brought about by this kind of dead end directly crushed her last bit of nerves. She suddenly squatted on the ground and began to wail loudly. The other prisoners in the dungeons around them all looked at each other excitedly, and frivolous whistles could be heard continuously. The law enforcement hall's experts were stunned. They looked at each other and turned to look at her. They scolded, "If you want to cry, cry outside. The dungeon is not a place for you to make a scene." Outside, Morong Zhen stopped crying. She looked up at the law enforcement hall's experts with tears in her eyes. "Don't you want to interrogate me?" The two law enforcement hall's experts laughed. "According to the rules, we were supposed to interrogate you. However, Hall leader Gong Yang told us not to make things difficult for the informant. Otherwise, who would dare to provide clues for the law enforcement hall in the future? Therefore, we're not going to interrogate you now. We're going to let you out." Really? Morong Zhen was overjoyed. She had been in despair, but now she had a new lease of life. She was so happy that her head was dizzy. "Of course it's true. Do you think the law enforcement hall is so free that we have so much time to play with you? Are you done crying? If you're done crying, get up." The law enforcement hall's experts were speechless. At the same time, they shouted at the top of their lungs to calm down the other prisoners in the dungeon. If it wasn't for the fact that Morong Zhen was a beautiful woman, he would not have been able to do anything to her. He had already impatiently sent a kick over. Yes, this little girl will get up now." After making such a blunder, Morong Zhen's face couldn't help but blush in embarrassment. However, she was secretly puzzled in her heart. When did Gong Yangjie become so generous? For so many years, the law enforcement hall under the command of Ramjia had always been known for its coldness and brutality. Those who were caught and brought here, even if they were innocent, would at least lose half of their lives. The number of people who had died in the law enforcement hall in the past 10 years was more than the number of people who had died in the previous 100 years. Logically speaking, there seemed to be nothing wrong with what he said just now, but it really didn't seem like Ramjia's style. Moreover, he knew his own business. Now that the person involved, Shangguan Laner, had returned, Morong Zhen's so-called report was simply full of doubts. Could Ramjia really not see through it at all? She was completely bewildered. After Morongzhen came out of the law enforcement hall, she went straight back to the welcome pavilion. Kong Mingming had already been waiting for her in her wooden house. "Miss Morong, that's great. You're finally back." Seeing that she came back safe and sound, Kong Mingming immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing that Kong Mingming cared about her so much, Morongzhen couldn't help but feel touched. Previously, because he forced her to take the risk to go to the law enforcement hall to report Lin Yi, her resentment also dissipated a lot. But Morongzhen was also a scheming woman after all. Just by glancing at Kong Mingming's happy expression, she quickly realized that this guy showed up here not because he cared about her at all. The reason why Kong Mingming stayed here was that he wanted to know Morongzhen's fate as soon as possible, so that he could judge whether he should stay or leave. The reason why Kong Mingming stayed here was that he wanted to know Morongzhen's fate as soon as possible, so that he could decide whether he should stay or leave. Seeing that Morongzhen's expression was cold, Kong Mingming choked and continued to smile. "I heard that Miss Morong was locked up in the law enforcement hall's dungeon. I was so worried. Now that I see that you're safe and sound, I can finally be at ease. Deacon Kong has to be on tenterhooks. This beauty is truly flattered. However, it is all thanks to Hall Leader Gong Yang that I was able to leave the law enforcement hall unscathed this time. If it wasn't for him speaking up for me, we would have been completely wiped out this time." Morongzhen suppressed the resentment in her heart and pretended to be mysterious as she said this to keep everyone in suspense. As expected, Kong Mingming's eyelids twitched when he heard that. He quickly asked, "All thanks to Hall Leader Ram? Ram Jia speaking up for you? What's your relationship with him?" Even a young master like Su Lingchong would find it hard to speak up for a powerful and overbearing person like Ram Jia. How could he stand up for a mere Morongzhen? Who knows? As the saying goes, even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. After all, the three great pavilions have more men than women. No matter how powerful and overbearing Hall Leader Ram Jia is, he's still a man full of vigor. "Officer Kong, what do you think?" Morongzhen deliberately gave him a coquettish look. She knew that it was pure wishful thinking for her to hook up with a person like Ram Jia with her beauty alone. However, she used the tiger's skin to play up the tiger's flag. By vaguely exaggerating her relationship with Ram Jia, she wouldn't offend anyone. At the same time, she could also use it to deter Kong Mingming. She wouldn't have to be the scapegoat if something happened to him in the future. I guess so. Kong Mingming was a little uncertain now. All men were lustful. He was a clear proof. If Ram Jia really liked Morongzhen, then he would have to reconsider his attitude towards Morongzhen in the future. What should we do now? The kidnapping incident hasn't passed yet. If we want to deal with Lin Yi, it won't be easy. Kong Mingming said half helplessly and half tentatively. Morongzhen glanced at him and shrugged. She backed off and said, "Don't look at me. I have no other choice now. If I continue to commit crimes against the public, it'll be too risky. I can't bear it. But if we just let Lin Yi do whatever he wants, would you be able to take it lying down, Miss Morong?" Kong Xiaoming wasn't willing to give up. "Even if I can't swallow it, what else can I do?" Morongzhen was also unwillingly. However, since things had developed to this point, she was already helpless against Lin Yi, who was getting stronger day by day. Suddenly, Morongzhen's eyes brightened. She suggested, 3 is better than 2. Why don't we ask Meng Tong to come and discuss it?" Chapter 40-48. If it had been the previous idiot Meng Tong, the two of them wouldn't have paid any attention to him. However, after eating the Meridian heart-shattering pill, Meng Tong's strength had skyrocketed and his temperament had changed greatly. Especially since Meng Jueguang's sudden death, he had been in a state of seclusion and had become somewhat unfathomable. Maybe he would be a good help. Meng Tong and Lin Yi's grudge was as deep as theirs. They were natural allies, and there was no doubt that he was reliable. However, Meng Tong, whose temperament had become even weirder, only scolded them coldly after listening to their conversation. Idiots! Morongzhen and Kong Mingming could no longer hold back their disdain. They had always thought that their status was far above Meng Tong's. but now they were being looked down upon by someone who used to be a nobody. It was intolerable. However, just as their expressions changed, they immediately felt a violent and ferocious aura pressing down on top of their heads, causing them to be a little breathless. You're already in the middle stage of the foundation building realm? Kong Mingming and Morongjun were shocked at the same time. They never thought that in such a short time, Meng Tong would be reborn and break through to the middle stage of the foundation building realm. When Morongjun first came to the welcome pavilion, her strength was at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm. She was the only one who stood out. Someone like Meng Tong was nothing in her eyes. However, in just a few months, he had become a middle-stage foundation-building realm powerhouse that she had to look up to. Strength determined the right to speak. If Meng Tong was still at the peak of the early stage of the foundation-building realm, Morongjun and Kong Mingming would have fallen out with him right away because of his disdain. However, he was now a middle-stage foundation-building realm powerhouse. His strength was completely above the two of them. That was a completely different story. Even if Morongjun and Kong Mingming were unhappy, they could only endure it for now. Meng Tong ignored the two's shock and continued to say disdainfully, "With your meager strength, you can't even defeat me. How dare they kidnap Shangguan Laner and frame Lin Yi?" It was truly a miracle that they were able to survive until now unscathed. Yet, they still had the face to wonder how they could find them. Even Shangguan Tianhua has personally come out. Is it strange that such a powerful person has a way to find you? A series of merciless disdain and criticism. Both Morongjun and Kong Xiaoming's faces turned red, and they were speechless. Looking back, they realized that kidnapping Shangguan Laner was really an act of obsession. It was really lucky for them to be able to live until now. Kidnap Shangguan Laner. This idea was proposed by Miss Morong in the beginning. It has nothing to do with me. Kong Mingming cleared himself. From the beginning to the end, he only wanted to deal with Lin Yi, unlike Morongjun, who had a personal grudge against Shanghai Laner. Morongjun was so embarrassed that he could not speak for a long time. After a long time, he said with a straight face, "Since things have come to this, why are you still talking about these useless things? You have the time to blame each other. It's better to think about how to deal with Lin Yi next." Now Su Lingchong is gone, and so is Meng Jueguang. Our backers are all gone. What else can we do? Meng Tong snorted disdainfully. If it was Meng Tong in the past, he would have jumped out to challenge Lin Yi a long time ago when his strength skyrocketed to the middle stage of the foundation building realm. He probably would not even bother to think about conspiracies. He just wanted to trample on Lin Yi to show off. However, his temperament had changed. He was no longer as stupid and naive as before. Instead, he had learned to endure. But we can't let Lin Yi go so easily. As long as we study him carefully, we can definitely find his weakness. Morongjun said unwillingly. Kong Mingming, you and Lin Yi are old rivals in the secular world. You should know his weakness the best. Meng Tong turned around and asked. His grudge with Lin Yi was real. No matter how his temperament changed, if there was a chance to kill Lin Yi, he would definitely not let it go. Kong Mingming thought about it and pondered for a moment. Well, this guy is affectionate and likes to show off. Other than that, there seems to be nothing. Hey, I got it. Meng Tong and Morongjun were excited at the same time. Say it. Lin Yi and Dongfang Badeo of Xuanji Pavilion are also rivals in the secular world. I heard that this old J8 lamp is doing well now. I will find him and think of a way together. Kong Mingming suggested. Although he had no friendship with Dongfang Badeo, the enemy of the enemy was a friend. Since they were all to deal with Lin Yi, naturally the more people the better. Meng Tong nodded and said, that's good. By the way, also find Zhong Pingliang of your Chongtian Pavilion. We can't lose contact with these people just because Su Lingchong is gone. I think Zhong Pingliang is also a good person. Yes, how could I forget him in this kidnapping? If he was there at the beginning, we wouldn't need to find Cha Wu, this fence-sitter. Kong Mingming nodded again and again. In fact, it couldn't be said that he forgot. During this time, Kong Mingming had been hanging out with Morongjun. At the beginning, he didn't call Zhong Pingliang purely because of the man's exclusive mentality. He didn't want Zhong Pingliang to take the opportunity to get too close to Morongzhen, this coquettish woman. But now he couldn't care about these miscellaneous things. It was more important to deal with Lin Yi. Kong Mingming immediately set off to find Dongfang Badeo. He had the identity of a new deacon. Even if Su Lingchong, this big backer, was gone, he was still relatively popular in the Welcome Pavilion. Everyone had to give him some face. More than half a year had passed. Looking at all the newcomers of the Welcome Pavilion, and the 3 pavilions, if you want to list the most famous and most glorious newcomers, Lin Yi was undoubtedly ranked first. Kong Mingming was ranked second with the bonus of a new deacon, and the third person was Dongfang Badeo of Xuanji Pavilion. Although most of the people on Heaven Stage Island looked down upon the cultivators from the secular world, it had been proven that every time a person was transported from the secular world, they might appear to be down and out because they were ostracized. But in the end, they would often become elites and stand above most of the local cultivators on Heaven Stage Island. This was not surprising at all. Everyone who had the opportunity to come to the Heavenly Stage Island was a super elite selected from hundreds of millions of people in the secular world. Even if they couldn't compare with the top group of people on the Heavenly Stage Island, if it was just to compete with the ordinary practitioners on the Heavenly Stage Island, they were absolutely more than enough in terms of strength and shrewdness. If they encountered a little more opportunity, they could easily stand out. Chapter 40-49. For a long time, watching Lin Yi's brilliant performance, Dongfang Badeo said that he was not jealous at all. It was absolutely nonsense. Even in his dreams he wanted to step on Lin Yi. It was a pity that he was in the mysterious pavilion, and had no intersection with Lin Yi of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, and it was difficult to pose any threat to Lin Yi. This feeling of power, but nowhere to use it, could make people crazy. Kong Xiaoming and the others simply couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him, because the mysterious pavilion stood them up during the voting for the new deacon. If it wasn't for Su Lingchong and the others losing their backing, they probably wouldn't even remember that such a figure existed until now. In the face of Kong Mingming's visit, Dongfang Badeo showed great enthusiasm, especially when he heard that they were going to join forces to deal with Lin Yi. He was extremely enthusiastic and agreed to join the team on the spot. Originally, Dongfang Badeo also had some intention of taking advantage of his seniority. He thought that after joining the team, he could at least be a person who gave orders. However, when he saw the strength of Meng Tong and Morongzhen, especially Meng Tong, a master in the middle stage of Zhuji realm, he suddenly shriveled. Dongfang Badeo did not dare to pretend and gave advice to everyone. The old men in our mysterious pavilion are self-contained and have a wide range of contacts. I heard a news related to Lin Yi a few days ago. I don't know if you have heard it. What news? Everyone asked. Lin Yi, that guy, seems to be preparing to cast recently. I heard from the old men in the mysterious pavilion that Lin Yi also followed Hong Zhong of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce to the auction in the extreme North Island. It seems that it was to bid for casting materials. I don't know where he got so many spirit jades to be so confident. Dongfang Badeo pinched his chin. Casting? Kong Mingming's eyes suddenly brightened, and he said excitedly, "Isn't that just right? Let's go and destroy him. Even if we can't kill him, we will disgust him." Hearing this, Meng Tong and Morongzhen also nodded one after another. This idea sounded a bit small, but at the moment, they had no better way. What's more, if they let Lin Yi cast any magic weapon, and his strength soared, it was not a good thing for them. It turns out that, no wonder Lin Yi has been appearing and disappearing mysteriously during this time. Only then did Morongzhen come to a realization. Then he said with a slight headache, "But if we're going to destroy it, we'll have to find the place where he forged the weapon first, right? It's like looking for a needle in a haystack with just the few of us. How are we supposed to find it?" Meng Tong thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Kong Mingming, when you kidnapped him, you used a flying spiritual beast." "That's right, I borrowed it from someone I know in the Hall of Alchemy. Although we have flying spiritual beasts in the Welcome Pavilion, there are only a few of them, and it's easy for people to notice. Kong Ming nodded. That's good. Continue to think of a way to borrow a flying spiritual beast. When Lenny shows up next time, we'll follow him in the sky. No matter how sensitive his senses are, he won't be able to sense us. When that time comes, we just need to follow the clues and find his hiding place. Meng Tong said confidently. That's right, that's a brilliant idea. Kong Ming and the rest nodded. With their strength alone, it was too difficult to follow Lin Yi on the ground. However, it would be a different story if they were in the sky. Not only would it be difficult to lose him, but it would also be difficult to find him. Under normal circumstances, it would be difficult to be discovered. After the few of them discussed the plan, they began to move. They asked Kong Ming to borrow a flying spiritual beast. On the other hand, Morong Zhen stayed in the wooden house to follow him. As soon as Lin Yi appeared, he would inform Meng Tong and the rest to take action. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't notice any of this at all. His mind was completely focused on the forging process that was about to start. After the King of Junk's repeated delays, everything was ready now. Success or failure depended on this. Before starting, Lin Yi specially returned to the welcome pavilion to inform senior brother Kupa and the rest. Once the equipment forging started, it could not be stopped halfway. Nobody knew how long it would last. Therefore, it was necessary to inform these people in advance, lest they thought that Lin Yi had gone missing and caused trouble. This gave Kong Ming and the rest, who were scheming, an opportunity. After Lin Yi left, they began to follow him in the sky. Although Lin Yi was cautious along the way, he neglected the flying spiritual beast above him. Even if he raised his head occasionally, he would not think too much about it. Flying spiritual beasts were very common mounts on Heaven Stage Island, and there were often flying spiritual beasts above him. When Kong Ming and the rest were in the sky, they did not have any malicious thoughts about Lin Yi, so the jade pendant would not alert them. What's this guy doing in the forest? Is he going to smith in the forest? He can't be that stupid, right? Kong Ming was confused when he saw Lin Yi running into the forest after leaving the welcome pavilion. They were not blacksmiths, but they knew that the requirement for the stability of the surrounding environment was not lower than that of alchemy. God knew if he would catch fire if he were to smith in the forest. Let's wait and see. Meng Tong and the rest were also confused. After hesitating for a while, they finally decided to stay put and let the flying spiritual beast fly back and forth in the sky, pretending to be busy. After a while, their eyes lit up at the same time. He's out. However, Morong Zhen was stunned. That's not right. This person is not Lin Yi. Look at his face. He looks completely different from Lin Yi. Women were always more attentive. Although they were not very high from the ground, they were still at a high altitude to ensure that Lin Yi would not notice them. Looking down from above, the person was just a peanut. At most, they could determine the person's identity by the position of the body. Very few people would pay attention to the specific appearance like Morong Zhen. However, after she said that, Meng Tong and Kong Ming also realized that something was wrong. Although it was not very obvious, they could still see the difference if they looked carefully. It's really not Lin Yi. Damn it. This forest is so dense that there's not even a place to stand. Normally, there shouldn't be anyone here. Where did this guy come from? I was almost misled by him. If I had followed the wrong person, all my efforts would have been in vain. Meng Tong secretly rejoiced. At that moment, Kong Ming suddenly slapped his thigh and said, Wrong. This guy is Lin Yi. You've all been deceived by him. What do you mean? Meng Tong and Morong Zhen were stunned at the same time. Chapter 40-50. That's right. I still remember the last time Southern Skygate, and Yuja deliberately called Lin Yi out. So that's what happened. If he really wanted to, it's not difficult for us cultivators to change a fake face at the last moment. Morong Zhen also came to a sudden realization. Meng Tong's eyes lit up when he heard that. So this guy is really Lin Yi? That's right, this place is so remote that no one would come here. Besides, forging is a matter of life and death. It's reasonable for him to change a fake identity for concealment. While they were talking, Lin Yi had gone directly to the secret base of the King of Rags. Now his mind was focused on forging, and he didn't notice the abnormality in the sky at all. Seeing that Lin Yi suddenly went into a hidden cave after walking around outside for a long time, Kong Ming Ming and the others were relieved and said excitedly, "This is definitely right. This cave should be the place where he forged." Haha, Lin Yi's dead for sure now that we've found such a big flaw. Let's wait for a while, wait for him to start forging. Then we will sneak attack together. Brother Meng Tong is now a master in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Together with the few of us, I don't believe that he can escape alive with so many people ganging up on him. Kong Ming Ming smiled with a confident face. Meng Tong was not in a hurry. He signaled Kong Ming Ming to let the flying spirit beast land, and ordered, "Don't rush, this is a rare opportunity. We have to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Let's stick to the previous discussion. Morongzhen and I will watch here first. Kong Ming Ming, you go call Dongfang Badeo and Zhong Pingliang here. We have more people in case he escapes again." "Okay, I'll go get them now." This time Lin Yi is looking for death. Looking for such a narrow cave with no way out. Then we five will block the entrance. He won't escape even if he dies. Kong Ming Ming replied with a smile. Kong Ming Ming was about to leave. Morongzhen suddenly said, "We can also inform Yu Zhe and Southern Skygate. Tell them that Lin Yi is Lin Heir. They're not exactly the same kind of people as us, but they're Lin Yi's sworn enemies. Just in case something happens to us, there'll be double insurance." Kong Ming Ming and Meng Tong looked at each other and nodded. "Ha ha ha, well said Lin Yi. Today we will see how you die." They immediately split up. After receiving the news from Kong Ming Ming, Zhong Pingliang suddenly became anxious. From the beginning to the end, he was the one who knew the latest, and these people only came to inform him when he was ready to take action. Now even if he wanted to remind Lin Yi, there was no time and opportunity. Zhong Pingliang lowered his head, and his face seemed to be uncertain. Kong Ming Ming couldn't help but squint his eyes in doubt. "What? You don't want to go?" "Go. Of course I will go. Such a good opportunity for revenge, how can I not go?" Zhong Pingliang suddenly raised his head and said, although he couldn't warn Lin Yi in advance, it was better to go than not to go. At worst, he would expose his identity and counterattack. "That's good. You go now and call the old bastard Dongfang Badeo. I will go to the soaring pavilion to greet Yu Zhe and Southern Skygate. I will come back immediately to take you there," Kong Ming Ming ordered. He immediately rode the flying spirit beast and flew away. Zhong Pingliang responded, but he couldn't help but worry for Lin Yi. During this time, he didn't have much contact with Lin Yi. He didn't know what Lin Yi's strength was now, but these people who were ready to attack him, the strength of this lineup was not simple. Although Zhong Pingliang had absolute confidence in Lin Yi's strength, it was limited to the premise of one-on-one. After all, Lin Yi was just a newcomer. No matter how strong his strength was, there was a limit. In the midst of anxiety, Kong Ming Ming had gone to the soaring pavilion and returned. He took him and Dongfang Badeo to meet Meng Tong and Morongzhen. All the people were in place. "Let's not delay, let's do it." As the one with the highest strength, Meng Tong naturally took the lead and entered the cave. Morongzhen and the others followed behind him in a single file. The safer way was to wait for Yu Zhe and Southern Skygate. At that time, maybe even a master of the Golden Core stage like Nan Tianba would be there, so it would be safe to deal with Lin Yi. However, after killing people, they usually took the treasures and divided the spoils. After all, they were not on the same side. If they really waited for Nan Tianba, even if there was something good on Lin Yi, they wouldn't have a chance to take it. It was better to hurry up and get rid of Lin Yi before Yu Zhe and the others arrived. Anyway, with their strength, as long as there were no accidents, it was more than enough to deal with Lin Yi alone. Even if they couldn't get rid of him, they still had Southern Skygate as a backup. Just as Meng Tong and the others stepped into the cave, the tattered king, who had already begun to forge, suddenly changed his expression. "Not good, someone came in." "How did you know?" Lin Yi was startled. The cave was long and narrow. Even with his senses, he was unable to sense the situation at the entrance, let alone the tattered king's strength. "Brother Lin, you might not know this, But my master didn't dig this cave just to find a place to rest. Not only is the spiritual qi abundant, and the environment is stable, making it suitable for forging weapons, he has also set up formations everywhere. As long as you merge your divine sense with the formations, you'll be able to sense the situation in every corner of the cave, explained the tattered king. Linny came to a realization and asked, "Who are they? How many are there?" "There are 5 of them, but I'm not sure who they are." The king of junk shook his head and said anxiously, "This is bad. Now that the forging has begun, it's too late to stop. We can't stop halfway, and we can't be affected in any way. Otherwise, all our efforts will be in vain, and so many precious materials will be wasted. Don't worry, leave them to me. You just need to focus on forging weapons." Lenny immediately stood up, patted the tattered king's shoulder to comfort him, and walked toward the entrance of the cave. He didn't know who had come in this time, but at this moment, the arrow was knocked on the bow. No matter how strong the other party was, he had to find a way to resist. Indeed, there were people coming, and the jade pendant began to warn him. At the same time, Meng Tong and the others who had groped their way into the cave were amazed. Chapter 40-51. How did Lanny find such a good place? It looks like it's right next to the spirit jade mine. Pay attention to your feet. Maybe you can pick up some spirit jades. Meng Tong and the others were amazed, but they slowed down and became more cautious. This place is obviously not something that Lin Yi could create alone. If there's a hidden master hiding here, wouldn't it be? Zhong Pingliang said, following Kong Mingming's train of thought. Zhong Pingliang's words made everyone's faces change. If there really was a master here, then they would have to think twice. However, Kong Mingming's face turned sinister. Master my ass. If there was a master, he would have come out to support Lin Yi. Why are you still hiding? That makes sense. Morongjin nodded, agreeing. Zhong Pingliang was secretly annoyed that he didn't scare them away. Just when they were feeling suspicious, a voice came from the depths of the cave. I was wondering who it was. I didn't expect it to be you guys. You're really haunting me. Lin Yi, Meng Tong and the others focused their gazes. Seeing that there was no one behind Lin Yi, they all let out sighs of relief and laughed coldly. Or should we call you Lin Yi the second? As expected of the rookie king who loves to show off, you still have the guts to show yourself at a time like this. Tell me, should we say that you're impressed, or should we say that you're stupid? Lin Yi wasn't surprised that someone had come out. Since these people were able to find this place, they'd probably already found out who he was. He smiled. I think it's better for you to say that yourselves. You've been through so much in the past, and you still haven't learned your lesson. How dare you come into a cave to block me? Haha, who gave you guys this much courage, this much boldness? This is my courage. Meng Tong harumphed coldly before he even finished his sentence. Without saying a word, his figure suddenly burst forward. In the next moment, his legs carried the power of wind and lightning that could captivate one's mind. The strength of the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage was completely revealed. This kick was determined to succeed, and it went straight for Lin Yi's head. Meng Tong had cultivated the thousand legs technique and was originally a speed expert. After taking the Meridian heart-shattering pill, his entire personality had changed. His speed was much faster than before, and it was so fast that people could not help but feel that it was strange. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. He didn't think that Meng Tong's strength would improve this quickly. Against such a sudden and swift 25 forms of thousand kicks, Meng Tong didn't even have time to react. With his current strength, it would be very difficult for him to avoid it. In this narrow cave, the space left for him to move about was too limited. Since he couldn't dodge, he could only face it head-on. Now that he was forced to make a move, how could he block this overbearing 25 styles of thousand kicks? In a hurry, Lin Yi did not advance but retreated instead. He clenched one hand into a fist, and instantly condensed a fervent and turbulent fist intent. Before the frenzied fire fist was released, the temperature in the entire cave suddenly rose a lot. A suffocating heat wave hit him in the face. Bang! The 25th style of the Raging Fire Fist clashed with the 25th style of the Thousand Kicks in an instant. The aftermath of the collision of their powerful forces stirred up layers of sand and stones, causing Morong Zhen and the others behind Meng Tong to be covered in dust. This face-to-face, Meng Tong only felt a slight numbness in his leg, and then he was forcefully shaken back. At the same time, Lin Yi, who was opposite him, also shook under the powerful impact of the 25 styles of Thousand Kicks. The two of them exchanged blows. No one was able to gain the upper hand, and they were actually evenly matched. It's really powerful, but it's a pity. You're still going to die today. Although he didn't succeed in one blow, Meng Tong was already mentally prepared for this. He immediately followed up with an even more ferocious 26 styles of Thousand Kicks. At the same time, he shouted to the people behind him, "What are you waiting for? Attack together." Hearing Meng Tong's shout, Morong Zhen, who was behind him, hurriedly used a cunning phantom finger to coordinate with Meng Tong's 26 styles of Thousand Kicks to attack. However, because they were standing in a straight line, Kong Ming and the others behind him could not coordinate with each other. The cave passage was too narrow. If they attacked together, it was very likely that they would accidentally injure Meng Tong and Morong Zhen before they hit Lin Yi. Even so, Meng Tong had already made up his mind. In his eyes, Lin Yi's strength was at most in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. It was already very difficult for him to face his 26 styles of Thousand Kicks. It was already very impressive that he could withstand it. On the other hand, Morong Zhen's phantom finger was not very powerful, but it won from a tricky angle. It was a perfect match for the already powerful Thousand Kicks. As long as it went straight for the vital parts, it would be the straw that broke the camel's back. Lin Yi was not moved. As he quickly gathered an extremely powerful genuine qi in his palms, he sneered disdainfully and said, "You're despicable enough, but you're still too weak. You've all suffered losses in my hands, but you don't learn from your mistakes. You're still so stubborn even when you're about to die." Meng Tong and the others laughed hideously. However, before they could finish laughing, everything came to an abrupt end. Lin Yi suddenly attacked with the 24 styles of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm. The genuine qi that poured out of his palms instantly danced like wild snakes. It directly passed through his opponent's Thousand Kicks and phantom finger, then turned into a pair of giant palms again. Although it was launched later, it arrived first and hit Meng Tong's chest without any suspense. Puff! Meng Tong spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, like a kite with a broken string, he was sent flying by the palm. Even Morong Zhen and Kong Ming, who were behind Meng Tong, were caught off guard. They were all hit by the palm, one after another, and they all fell to the ground, looking very embarrassed. How is this possible? I've been suffering for so long, and I'm already an expert in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. How can I still not defeat this kind of country bumpkin? Meng Tong's face was immediately filled with disbelief. His eyes stared at Lin Yi, who was approaching him step by step, and he could not help but murmur. For such a long time, Meng Tong had to suffer the destruction of the Meridian heart-shattering pill every day. Being able to quickly improve his strength under such inhuman torture, Meng Tong felt that he had been reborn. He was not an existence that ordinary cultivators like Lin Yi could compare with. It should have been easy for him to defeat Lin Yi at the same level. However, he did not expect the reality to be so cruel. After his strength soared, he was confident that he would win for the first time. He did not even hesitate to ask Morong Zhen to cooperate with him to launch a sneak attack. But in the end, he was knocked down by Lin Yi with one move. His ending was almost the same as before. This was too weird and ironic, right? Chapter 4052. After a pause, Lin Yi glanced at everyone with evil intentions. Speaking of which, have you guys played football before? Why don't we play? Football? Kong Ming and the others' eyelids twitched at the same time. Without waiting for them to react, Lin Yi raised his leg and kicked Meng Tong, mercilessly sending him flying several meters back. Meng Tong, who had lost his soul, didn't even have the strength to make a proper movement to resist. This time, not only was Meng Tong at the front unlucky, but even Morong Zhen and the others, who hadn't reacted in time, suffered with him. After one kick, another followed. Lin Yi treated Meng Tong like a football and kicked him out of the cave. Morong Zhen, Kong Xiaoming, and the others were in an even worse state. Not only did they have to piss their pants, but they also couldn't escape the fate of being used as a human shield. Although they weren't injured directly, they all had bruises all over their faces. What the fuck, this was football. After being toyed with by Lin Yi, Kong Ming, and the others wanted to die. They wanted to fight to the death several times. But Lin Yi controlled the rhythm and didn't give them a chance to stand up. In such a narrow passage, if they were to fall, fighting to the death would be wishful thinking. Among them, only Zhong Pingliang, who was at the back, escaped. Not only did he not suffer because of Lin Yi's intentional care, but he also deliberately blocked the escape route of the people in front of him. Without a trace, Lin Yi wouldn't have the chance to kick them so happily otherwise. After being kicked out of the cave, not only Meng Tong, but also Kong Ming, and the others couldn't stand up anymore. Not to mention fighting Lin Yi. Even if they wanted to run, Lin Yi wouldn't give them the chance. Lin Yi looked around and said lightly, "In the wilderness, there's no one around. It's a good place to hide a corpse, don't you think?" Kong Xiaoming and the others shivered in fright. They came here with only one goal in mind, to kill Lin Yi. They never thought that with so many of them, they would end up in a situation where Lin Yi could do whatever he wanted. "You, how dare you? Do you know what the crime is for newbies to kill each other?" Kong Ming and the others quickly said. Lin Yi shook his head indifferently and smiled. "I don't know, but no one will find out anyway. Since you came to kill me, I'll kill you instead. There should be nothing to complain about, right? Everyone is an adult. We should be open-minded and reasonable. Don't you think so?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi was about to make his move. They'd been hindering him time and time again, and he really wanted to kill these people, especially with Meng Tong's shocking rate of growth. If he continued to let them live, there would be no end to their troubles. He might as well go all the way. He might as well kill them all. Anyway, there was no one else here. After killing them and burying their bodies, no one would know. Even if the law enforcement hall investigated later, they wouldn't directly find Lin Yi. The risk was not great. One by one. "Let's start with you, Great Deacon Kong." Murderous intent was revealed. Lin Yi walked slowly to Kong Ming, which really scared Kong Ming so much that he almost peed his pants. Dongfang Badeo was also scared. He shouldn't have come. From the beginning to the end, he had to be buried with them. It was really bad luck. Watching Lin Yi's hand coming to his neck, Kong Ming was scared to retreat on the ground. After rolling and crawling away for a few feet, he had an idea and shouted, "Lin Yi, don't be arrogant. We came here to find you. There are other people who know. He is coming. If you dare to kill us, you can't escape punishment yourself. At that time, you will have to be buried with us." After listening to this, Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. He noticed that Zhong Pingliang was also secretly nodding to himself. If no one knew, he could kill them here. But now if he killed these people, he would have to be buried with them. There was no way. Seeing Lin Yi's murderous intent finally converged, Kong Ming quickly gritted his teeth and rolled up. He didn't dare to say any more nonsense to stimulate Lin Yi. Before the other party changed his mind, he quickly sat on the flying spirit beast not far away and prepared to leave. With Kong Ming taking the lead, other people such as Morong Zhen and others also followed suit. They took Meng Tong, who was scared out of his wits, and hurriedly climbed on the flying spirit beast to escape. Seeing these people fleeing in panic, Lin Yi could only stop, although he was unwilling. Otherwise, if he really killed these people, he would be happy, but he would have to pay with his life. At that time, even if Shanghai Tianhua came forward, he might not be able to save him. Inexplicably, these people know the place where I forge. It's not a big trouble. Lin Yi had a headache. Due to the use of many rare materials, there weren't many precedents that could be used as reference. Even the king of junk couldn't be sure how long this forging would take. According to his past experience, it wouldn't be a short time. If Kong Ming and the others came back to wreak havoc, he couldn't let his guard down. The only good news was that these people's backers were either dead or missing. If they wanted to face Lin Yi with their own strength, they would only end up like today. They were purely looking for trouble, so there was no need to worry too much about it. At that moment, a few whistling sounds came from above. Then, 3 figures descended from the sky and appeared in front of Lin Yi with unfriendly expressions. They were Nan Tianba, Nan Tianmen and Yuzha. Second Lin, we finally caught you. My first and second martial uncles are here. Let's see how you're going to escape. Wahahaha. Yuzha laughed arrogantly. Previously, when they received Kong Mingming's report, they didn't believe it. After the incident at the extreme North Island, although they hated Lin Yi, they didn't believe that Lin Yi was second Lin. In comparison, Kong Mingming was more suspicious. But now Lin's second was standing right in front of them. It didn't matter who his other identity was. All they needed to know was that Lin's second was the killer of their third brother, Nan Tianyong, and that Lin's second had the star inkstone on him. Seeing the 3 people descending from the sky, Lin Yi was shocked. Previously, Kong Mingming said that someone knew they were here, but he didn't think that the people who knew were these 3 enemies. This matter was serious. Chapter 4053. As for Southern Sky Gate and Nan Tianba, the former was at the Foundation Establishment Perfection stage, and the latter was an unfathomable gold core stage expert. If Lin Yi wanted to face such a strong enemy by himself, he had no chance of winning. Even the possibility of retreating was very small, because the other side would not give him the chance to secretly prepare a killing move. Lin second, you really made me look for you. Third brother has died for so long. He can finally rest in peace today. Nan Tianba's body emitted an indescribable killing intent. Even the birds and beasts within 100 feet of him scattered in fright. Southern Sky Gate had a sinister expression as he said, "Be a bit more sensible, and hand over the star inkstone. I can make the decision to leave your corpse intact. But it doesn't matter if you don't want to say it. At most, I'll spend a bit of energy to use the soul-searching technique. But if I do that, you'll be in trouble. Have you heard of human swine? I'll cut off your arms and legs, dig out your eyes and cut off your tongue. I'll make you beg for death." Each one was more overbearing than the last. Lin Yi's heart trembled. His brain quickly turned to think of a way to deal with them. But his expression remained unchanged. He curled his lips and said, "So you're saying that I have to die today? Haha, could it be that you're still dreaming of living past today? You even asked such a stupid question. Don't you think you're too stupid?" Yuzha laughed wildly. After suppressing his anger for so long under the hands of Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate, he finally found a punching bag. Then, Yuzha turned to Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate and asked, "Martial uncles, although this person is Lin Yi without a doubt, this disciple thinks it's necessary to find out his other identity. If he really is Lin Yi, then we'll be better prepared to face Hong Zhong and the others in the future." Although Kong Mingming had already said that Lin Yi was Lin Yi, it was still necessary to confirm it with his own eyes. Nan Tianba originally wanted to kill Lin Yi to avenge his third brother. But after thinking about it, he nodded and said, "Fine. As for the whereabouts of the star inkstone and his other identity, just use the soul-searching technique on him. There's no need to waste time with him." All right. The Southern Heavenly Gate immediately agreed. Using the soul-searching art would damage one's divine sense, but compared to the bountiful rewards of the star inkstones, this small price was negligible. "Hold on, you don't have to do anything. I can tell you directly that I am Lin Yi," Lin Yi said as he reached out and took off the 1,000 silk mask, revealing his true colors. Nan Tianba and the other two's eyes became serious. Seeing this, Yuzha was overjoyed. He turned to Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate and said, "I knew it. This little brat was without a doubt Lin Heir. However, your acting was too good, causing me to be punished by the 2 martial uncles. Today, I'll make you pay back 100 times over." He recalled his experience at the northernmost island, where Nan Tianba and the Southern Heaven Gate fought. It was Lin Heir and Lin Yi. To them, this was a double grudge. Just as well, we can settle old and new grudges at the same time. Now that Hong Zhong has gone far away to Middle Island, I want to see who else can save you. Second brother, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it. Nan Tianba clenched his teeth and said. The Southern Sky Gate nodded. He took a step forward and reached out his hand to grab Lin Yi. Even though Lin Yi was an expert at the peak of the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, there was still a huge gap between their cultivation levels. Unless he used a trump card like the Pillfire True Chi Bomb, his chances of winning against the Southern Sky Gate were slim. However, at this moment, Lin Yi suddenly smiled and said calmly, Do you really think that since Old Hong isn't here, no one can save me? What do you mean? Who else can save you? Why don't you tell us? It's not a wise choice to play tricks on us at a time like this. It will only make your death worse. The South Heaven Gate came to a stop and said with a hideous grin. Trying to be mysterious? Do I look like such a senseless person? Why don't you just say it? The person who can save me is here. And he's right in the middle of you. Lin Yi stared at one person with a burning gaze. It was Yuzha. Being stared at by Lin Yi made Yuzha's hair stand on end. Although he didn't know what the problem was, he had a bad feeling about this. You mean Yuzha? Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate couldn't help but feel suspicious. The way they looked at you, Yuzha also carried a sense of judgment. Although they were martial nephews, they didn't have much contact with Yuzha before. They only relied on them after the Southern Sky Gate was killed, so they couldn't be considered to know him well. How is that possible? I want to tear him to pieces to avenge my master. How could I save him? Martial uncles, don't fall for this brat's trick. Yuzha hurriedly denied. The Southern Sky Gate reacted quickly and said, Brat, don't look down on us too much. You actually said that Yuzha would save you. Do you think we'll believe you with such a lowly attempt to sow discord? Do you think we're pigs? That's right. Even if Yuzha had such thoughts, with his weak strength, wanting to save you in front of my eyes is simply a fool's dream. Nan Tianba also coldly laughed. Martial uncles are wise. This brat still hasn't given up on his evil intentions, and wants to sow discord between martial nephews and the two martial uncles. He should be torn to pieces. Yuzha let out a sigh of relief and quickly added insult to injury. Seeing the three people's expressions become more and more unfriendly, Lin Yi remained calm. You've misunderstood. I didn't say Yuzha would directly save me. What I meant was, he will die in my place. What? You want me to die in your place? Is there something wrong with your head? Yuzha was stunned for a moment before laughing out loud. However, the bad feeling in his heart that he couldn't get rid of became even stronger. At the same time, Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate both looked at Lin Yi like he was an idiot. They thought that Lin Yi had been scared to the point of losing his mind and was starting to talk nonsense. Doesn't it sound ridiculous? However, after you watch this, I think you'll change your mind. Lin Yi smiled. He took out his phone and pulled out a video he had taken earlier. What kind of bullshit is this? Nan Tianba and the other two couldn't help but be stunned. No matter how knowledgeable they were, it was impossible for them to have seen the development of smartphones in the mortal world. They immediately looked at each other in dismay. Chapter 4054. Why was this thing similar to the legendary Xiang chicken? Yuzha, why are you in here? Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate asked curiously. I don't know either. Who knows what kind of sorcery this brat is using? Yuzha himself was also at a loss. Looking at the familiar scene in the video, his heart started to beat wildly uncontrollably. Following this, the scene changed. A familiar figure who was on the verge of death appeared, causing Nan Tianba and the South Heaven Gate to open their eyes wide. At this moment, no matter how shocked or slow Yuzha was, he finally reacted. Wasn't this the scene of Nan Tianyong's death? If this continued, wouldn't it be the scene of him killing Nan Tianyong? Yuzha suddenly quivered and finally found the source of the ominous feeling. If Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate were to see the scene of him killing his master, even if he had 10,000 lives, it wouldn't be enough to kill him. You still dare to play tricks? I'll kill you right now and avenge my master. In a moment of desperation, Yuzha suddenly yelled and attacked Lin Yi. Even if he couldn't kill Lin Yi in one go, he had to destroy the unknown thing in Lin Yi's hand first. Otherwise, he would live in fear for the rest of his life. However, Yuzha's attack was still a step too late. The scene of him killing Nan Tianyong with his own hands was clearly seen by Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate. Bang! Lenny raised his leg and kicked Yuzha several meters away. The entire place fell into a dead silence. After a while, Nan Tianba's voice, which was filled with anger, finally reached everyone's ears. Yuzha, did you kill third brother? No. Martial uncle, I'm innocent. This is all an illusion created by Lin Yi. Don't fall into his trap. Yuzha hurriedly defended himself with sweat dripping down his forehead. Nan Tianba and the South Heaven Gate were infuriated. If this was true, then they had been played like fools by Yuzha from the beginning. However, they had never seen a mobile phone before. And this video came from the hands of their enemy, Lin Yi. They had to carefully weigh the credibility of the video. But Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "Isn't it too late to quibble now? With your eyesight, it should be easy for you to determine whether this video is real or fake. Besides, don't you know the soul-searching technique? Whether it's real or fake, we'll know once we try." At this point, Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate were already 70 to 80% convinced. Being able to reach the peak of the Foundation Establishment realm, and even the Gold Core realm, there was no need to doubt their shrewdness. Especially when it came to something as important as Nan Tianyong's death. Trying to deceive them was easier said than done. Especially Nan Tianba, who had seen much of the world, immediately nodded his head. "This is the Xiang chicken of the secular world? I've heard of these things. I didn't expect you to have them." Seeing the two of them looking at him with unkind eyes, Yuzha's legs immediately went soft. He hysterically continued to quibble. "Martial uncles don't believe him. How could I do something as disgraceful as killing my master? He's clearly trying to sow discord. If he used the soul-searching technique on me, even if I was wrongly accused, I would still become a cripple." Hearing this, Southern Sky Gate coldly said, "Don't worry. Even if I don't use the soul-searching technique, I can still determine whether it's real or fake. Third brother's corpse is still in the law enforcement hall's ice cellar. As long as I compare the scars on third brother's body, the truth will naturally come to light. If the final result is that you're deceiving me, Yuzha, just wait to be cut into pieces. I will definitely use you as a living sacrifice to third brother's soul in heaven." Nan Tianba's voice seemed to come out from between his teeth. The murderous intent in it made Yuzha tremble in fear. At this moment, Yuzha didn't know how to quibble anymore. He fell to the ground in a daze, his eyes filled with hatred as he stared at Lin Yi. At this moment, Southern Sky Gate suddenly said, "Big brother, even if Yuzha really killed third brother, we can't let Lin Yi go so easily. We still haven't taken revenge for what happened in the extreme North Island. Furthermore, he still has the star ink stone that I want." To Southern Sky Gate, including third brother Nan Tianyong's death, everything else was just fleeting clouds. Only the star ink stone was his target. "That's fine. Then we'll take this brat away as well. It won't be too late to kill him after we've figured everything out." Nan Tianba's only thought now was to find out who killed third brother. Seeing that Southern Sky Gate was about to make another move, Lin Yi immediately said, "Catch me? Have you thought about the consequences of this? Miss Shengguan also knows that I'm here. If you don't catch the murderer and make a move on me, think about the consequences yourself." "Oh, that's right. Pavilion Master Shengguan personally promised me that I can look for him if I need anything. As disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, don't you need to ask him for instructions?" Hearing this, the eyelids of Nan Tianba and the Southern Heaven Gate twitched. Shengguan Lan'er was nothing much, as she was just a young mistress with no real strength. However, Shengguan Tianhua was someone who could easily crush them to death with a single finger. If what Lin Yi said was true, and they took Lin Yi away now, it was equivalent to publicly slapping Shanghai Tianhua in the face. The consequences would be unimaginable. Although Southern Sky Gate didn't want to believe these words, he remembered that Lin Yi was invited to Shanghai Laner's birthday banquet as a newcomer. Especially after the recent kidnapping incident, there were rumors that Shanghai Tianhua treated Lin Yi differently. This meant that these words were not fabricated. This risk was not something that Southern Sky Gate could take, nor could Nan Tianba. After hesitating for a moment, Nan Tianba clenched his teeth and coldly snorted. I'll let you go for now. Let's go. After saying this, Nan Tianba grabbed the dejected Yuzha with one hand and jumped onto the flying spiritual beast. Southern Sky Gate looked at Lenny unwillingly, but in the end, he didn't dare to make a move and bitterly followed. Seeing Nan Tianba and the other two fly away, Lenny finally let out a sigh of relief. Facing a golden core stage and a foundation establishment stage expert alone, even though they didn't really fight, the pressure was not something an ordinary person could handle. He'd probably be a corpse right now if he'd said anything wrong in that conversation. It was fortunate that he'd been smart enough to take a video of Yuzha killing his own Shifu. Otherwise he'd be dead for sure. Chapter 40-55. Who are you? The king of tattered rags was shocked to see an unfamiliar face. Don't be nervous, it's me. I've always been wearing a mask. This is my true appearance. I'm really sorry for hiding it from you. Linny explained. Hey, it's you, Brother Lin. It's okay. I can also make a mask that can change one's appearance. It's understandable that you have to keep a trick up your sleeve. The tattered king smiled. Linny nodded and asked with concern. I've already taken care of the trouble outside. It didn't affect your forging, right? No, it's still the warm-up phase of forging. Although we can't stop halfway, at least for the next few days. We just have to wait patiently on the side. There's nothing to do for now. The tattered king said. That's good. I'm afraid that these people will ruin our plans. Lenny sighed in relief. He didn't stay idle after that. He sat on the side and discussed the subsequent forging matters with the tattered king. This time, other than forging weapons for himself, he had another task, which was to observe and learn. No matter what, he was still a blacksmith. He should have some improvement in this aspect. Otherwise, he couldn't come back to the tattered king for help every time he had a need for forging weapons in the future. At the same time, Yuzha, who was brought back by Nan Tianba, wasn't in a good mood. The three of them went to the law enforcement hall to examine the corpse and quickly came to a conclusion. Third brother Nan Tianyong was indeed killed by Yuzha. Because of the appearance, Nan Tianyong didn't examine it carefully. Now that he saw it, he knew that he was tricked by Yuzha. The evidence was conclusive. This time, Yuzha was completely unable to explain himself. The last trace of hope in his heart was also annihilated. This time he was completely disheartened. You treacherous scum. How could third brother have a disciple like you? You must have been blind. I will cut you into 1,000 pieces tomorrow. I will be a living sacrifice for third brother's soul in heaven. Nan Tianba was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. No matter who killed Nan Tianyong, he could accept it. However, it was Nan Tianyong's disciple who killed him. This was too intolerable. They wouldn't even be able to die in peace. Especially since he and the Southern Sky Gate had been tricked by a nobody like Yuzha for so long. Now that he thought about it, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. How embarrassing! A traitorous disciple killing his own master. No matter what era it was. It would be a huge scandal no matter where it was. Although Nan Tianba and the South Heaven Gate did not want anyone to know about it, there was no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. The moment they had conducted the autopsy, the news had already spread. In less than half a day, the news of Yuzha killing his master had already spread throughout the three great pavilions. In the streets and alleys, almost everyone was talking about this matter. First, Su Lingchong attempted to rape her and escaped, followed by the Shangguan Laner kidnapping incident. Now, the huge scandal of Yuzha murdering his teacher had been exposed. The three great pavilions, or more accurately, the Soaring Sky Pavilion, had been hit by one wave after another. However, even if everyone knew about it, it did not change Nan Tianba's determination to kill Yuzha. This was his family's matter. Even if it was the three great pavilions and the law enforcement hall, they had no right to interfere. Furthermore, it had already been known by others. Nan Tianba decided to no longer hide it. He publicly opened a sacrificial altar on the Soaring Sky Pavilion's plaza, and in front of countless people, sacrificed Yuzha to his third brother, Nan Tianyong. To Nan Tianba, although doing this might attract criticism, it was the best way to wash away the shame that Yuzha had brought to his family. The news spread like wildfire. By noon the next day, the Soaring Sky Pavilion's plaza was already filled with hundreds and thousands of people. Not only were there disciples from the Soaring Sky Pavilion, disciples from the other two pavilions also came to watch the show. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate brothers suddenly stood everyone up. There was no other way. Yuzha had disappeared. Looking at the empty basement, Nan Tianba's domineering aura caused the three-corpse god to explode. However, at the same time, even he himself felt that it was unimaginable. From yesterday until now, he had not taken even half a step out of the room above. In this completely sealed basement, the only exit was right under his feet. It was surrounded by a tight defensive array, so it was impossible to escape from any other place. However, such an impossible thing had happened right in front of his eyes. Yuzha, who was supposed to close his eyes and wait for his death, had disappeared from the face of the earth without any warning. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew his big brother's temperament, Southern Sky Gate would have suspected that his big brother's heart had softened and secretly released Yuzha. However, this was impossible. Regarding the death of his third brother, Nan Tianyong, Nan Tianba could only let Yuzha suffer a few more cuts and die a more miserable death. He definitely could not let him live. After a long time, Nan Tianba faintly said, "It seems like an expert saved him." "What?" Southern Sky Gate was shocked. "Big brother, you personally guarded this place. Who could hide from your eyes and ears and save Yuzha from the basement? That's not possible, right?" "I also don't think it's possible, but there is always someone better than you out there. The truth is right here. What else can you say?" Nan Tianba helplessly said. This time, Southern Sky Gate was also speechless. In his eyes, Nan Tianba was a gold core expert and was extremely strong. However, in the three great pavilions, there were still many people who were stronger than Nan Tianba. What the two of them couldn't understand was that in these past few months, Yuzha had always been trying to please them. When did he manage to hook up with such a strong person? Yuzha's disappearance immediately caused a huge uproar. Not only did it cause Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate brothers to lose face, it was also the second case of someone escaping and disappearing after Su Lingchong. The time between the two cases was less than a month. In the secret underground room, Yuzha slowly opened his eyes. Borrowing the dim light to look around, he suddenly trembled and begged, "Martial uncle, I beg you to spare my little life. It was Disciple's fault that I had evil thoughts. Disciple deserves to die. Disciple is worse than a dog, but Disciple is still useful to you. As long as you spare Disciple this time, in this life, no, in the next life, the life after that, I will work like a horse for you." Halfway through his words, he was suddenly interrupted by a black-cloaked figure in the shadows. "Save it, I'm not Nan Tianba. You don't need to be afraid, I won't kill you, and I won't hand you over to Nan Tianba." Chapter 40-56. Now that he had woken up, Yuzha instinctively thought that he was still in that secret room. He had never thought that he had already been moved without anyone noticing. Even though it was still an underground secret room, it was no longer the same room he had been in before. "Then who are you? Why did you bring me here?" Yuzha rejoiced in his heart, but immediately became vigilant again. Could it be that he had just left the wolf's den and entered the tiger's den? The dark and gloomy secret room in front of him was even more indestructible than Nan Tianba's, and there was nowhere to escape to. If this mysterious person really wanted to save him, why would he bring him to this kind of place? "You're quite vigilant. It seems that I didn't save you for nothing." The mysterious man paused for a moment and suddenly smiled meaningfully. "To be honest, I admire you very much. It's rare to see a person who can kill his own master with his own hands. In terms of temperament, you meet my requirements very well." "What do you mean?" Yuzha became more cautious. He inconspicuously moved backwards, trying to stay as far away from this mysterious person as possible. He had indeed killed Nan Tianyong with his own hands, but he still felt very guilty about this matter. Normally, he did not dare and did not want to take the initiative to think about this matter. However, from the mysterious person's attitude, this person seemed to admire him very much. Wasn't he a pervert? Seeing Yuja's cautious expression, the mysterious person did not mind and lightly said, "It's nothing. I only saved you because I admire you. Otherwise, you would have been cut into pieces by Nantianba in front of everyone. However, don't think about running away now that you're here. That's not realistic. Also, I believe that you're not stupid enough to go out and seek death." After saying this, the mysterious person's killing intent almost materialized for a moment. Even if it was only for a short moment, the shock it gave Yuja was unforgettable. This mysterious person in front of him, he was not an existence that Nantianba could fight against. Yuja took a deep breath and finally recognized his current situation. His previous thoughts were not wrong. He had indeed just left the wolf's den and had immediately fallen into an even more dangerous tiger's den. "What does Your Excellency want me to do?" Yuja stared at the figure in the darkness and asked. The mysterious person did not speak and threw something over. It landed in front of Yuja and made a clanking sound. Yuja was shocked. He thought that it was a hidden weapon that could kill someone, but in the next moment, his eyes suddenly widened as he stared at the stone in front of him, unable to move his eyes away. After a long time, Yuja swallowed a few times, his face filled with disbelief as he stammered. This is Starring Stone. Your eyesight isn't bad. There's no mistaking it. This is Staring Stone. However, half of it has already been used up." The mysterious man nodded calmly. "Used half." Yuja couldn't help but stare blankly when he heard this. He observed carefully under the dim light. Only then did he discover that this piece of star inkstone was not the one he had seen at the Hong merchant house. Not only was its shape different, its color and foundation were clearly weaker. Even so, this was a treasure that Yuja dreamed of. The star inkstone could allow one to perfectly break through to the most powerful golden core stage. And even if one used half of the star inkstone, the supplementary effects wouldn't be too bad. Seeing Yuja's greedy expression, as if he wanted nothing more than to swallow the star inkstone into his stomach, the mysterious person laughed. "Not only will you be able to keep your life, but this half of the staring stone will also be yours. How about it?" Although Yuja's mind was already clouded by the star inkstone, he hadn't completely lost his reason. Hearing this, he immediately hesitated and struggled. "Don't worry, I won't let you suffer a loss. This piece of star inkstone is only an advance payment to you, that's all." The mysterious person paused, and then his tone changed. "Of course, if you don't agree, that's fine. I won't kill you. I will only return the item to its rightful owner and send you back to the hands of Nantianba." Yuja quivered and remembered that with his current situation, he didn't dare to go out. Without the protection of this mysterious person, his fate would be death by 1,000 cuts. Thinking of this, Yuja didn't hesitate any longer. He gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I agree. Then what do you want me to do now?" The mysterious person wasn't surprised at this and said calmly, "There's nothing I want you to do right now. You just need to focus on cultivating here and quickly increase your strength. When I need you, I will naturally notify you." "I understand. No matter what, many thanks for your kindness in saving my life. In the future, if you have any orders, I will definitely go through fire and water and offer my life to you." Yuja immediately swore and flattered. Unexpectedly, the mysterious person said mockingly, "You don't need to do this with me. You're someone who can even kill his own master without blinking. Do you think I will believe your cheap oath? Remember, never play tricks in front of me. If this happens again, I will make you regret not dying at the hands of Nantianba." After saying this, the mysterious person's figure flickered and disappeared right in front of Yuja's eyes. It was a simple sentence, but the feeling of being seen through was even more frightening to Yuja than the physical killing intent from before. He was filled with lingering fear. However, Yuja's attention quickly shifted back to the star inkstone. All sorts of experiences had made him deeply understand that only when one's own strength was powerful, everything else was fleeting. This star inkstone was a cheat that could allow him to ascend the path of the strong. Yuja's disappearance had caused a huge uproar in the 3 great pavilions. However, Lenny knew nothing about it. During this period of time, he had stayed with the tattered king and focused on his great business of forging. 7 days had passed since Kong Mingming and Nan Tianba had come looking for trouble. As early as 3 days ago, the most basic warm-up stage had already ended. Now it was time for the most crucial part of forging. The more powerful the divine weapon, the higher the requirements for the forging master. There couldn't be the slightest mistake during the forging process. Even if there was a slight deviation of half a centimeter, the final result might be completely different from what one had expected. Extremely rare materials, such as the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient pure soil, would also be burnt to ashes. From then on, they would become a pile of waste, which made one sigh with regret. Not only was Lin Yi unwilling to see such a tragic result, but the tattered king, who regarded forging as his life, was even more unwilling to see it. For the past few months, the tattered king had spent a lot of effort on forging. Even compared to Lin Yi, who had provided many extremely rare materials, the amount he had spent was no less. Chapter 4057. Since the beginning of the forging process, the king of Junk had been extremely tense. He was personally in charge of every step of the process and could not afford to make any mistakes. Lin Yi, on the other hand, wasn't idling around. It was a rare opportunity to observe the entire process from such a close distance. And in just a short 7 days, he'd already learned quite a bit from the king of Garbage's teachings. In these 7 days, there were no deviations in the crafting process. Everything was going according to the script that the king of Junk had planned beforehand. The anxiety in his heart slowly faded away, and he started to feel more at ease. He was glad that he hadn't found the wrong person. Everything was difficult at the beginning. Since they had passed the most important beginning stage, the forging process was already half a success. Lin Yi thought that everything would go smoothly. However, on the 8th day, everything came to an abrupt end. That's it. Looking at the gradually calming casting pool, Lin Yi was dumbfounded. This was completely different from the plan that the king of Junk had told him about. At this moment, even the king of Junk himself was going crazy. Although he could not accurately predict how long the forging process would take, it was only the 8th day. According to the experience of many blacksmiths, the more powerful a divine weapon was, the longer the forging process would take. As long as a divine weapon was of a slightly higher grade, it was normal for it to take several months, or even several years. But this time, the forging process had used extremely rare materials like the 10,000-year-old tree crystal and the ancient sacred soil. No matter what, it couldn't be weaker than other weapons, right? However, it was an indisputable fact that the casting pool had calmed down. Normally, such a situation would only occur when the final weapon was formed. However, it was only the 8th day. Looking at the lump in the forging pool, even a ghost wouldn't believe that it was a fully formed godly weapon. What should we do now? Lin Yi's mouth twitched. He turned to look at the king of Junk. This thing, should I use it to smash people? Impossible. 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 The tattered king hammered his head as he paced back and forth around the forging pool, mumbling to himself. Lin Yi couldn't help but worry that the guy might just fall into the foundry when he saw how crazy he was. That would really kill him. Lin Yi, on the other hand, found it inconceivable as well. The whole plan was thought up by the king of Garbage alone, but he'd analyzed and discussed it with Lin Yi in detail during the process. To ensure the success rate of the forging, he'd done a lot of preparation beforehand. Lin Yi had specially gone to the far north island to bid for those high-level casting materials. There was only one ultimate use for it, and that was to ensure the stability and success rate of the crafting process. This was one of the reasons why the crappy king asked Lin Yi to take out a couple of sky-class weapons he didn't use and put them into the crafting process. Who would have thought that even after making such thorough preparations, it would still end up like this? This? Lin Huang asked. This? The king of the tatters. We failed. At this moment, the king of Junk squatted down. He stuck his face to the edge of the casting pool, which really shocked Lin Yi. Is this guy really going to take things too hard? Although the casting pool has calmed down, the temperature is still shockingly high. However, the temperature was frighteningly high. Even a foundation establishment expert would not be able to endure it. Just when Lin was about to stop him, the king of junk's eyes suddenly lit up. No, I know the reason. We haven't failed yet. Haven't failed yet. Lin was stunned. Yes, we haven't failed yet. To be precise, we haven't completely failed yet. The king of junk instantly became 100 times more energetic. Pointing at the casting pool, he explained to Lin, "You'll know if you look closely. This pool has not completely cooled down, and the god weapon has not been completely shaped. It seems that if we don't find a way to solve the problem, it will remain in this lukewarm state. We still have a way to fix it." Hearing this, Lin could not help but feel refreshed. After observing for a while, he confirmed that the god weapon was still changing at a speed that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. He immediately asked, "What problem should we solve?" "Solve the conflict between the attributes of the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient Pure Land," the king of junk said with certainty. "Brother Lin, I've told you before that the most basic requirement for casting is that the attributes of all the casting materials must be compatible. Even if they are incompatible, we must find a way to neutralize them with other auxiliary materials. This is the problem we're facing now. How could it be? The 10,000-year tree crystal is of the wood attribute, and the ancient Pure Land is of the earth attribute. How could there be a conflict between the two?" Lin asked curiously. It was common sense that wood and earth were mutually reinforcing. The king of junk shook his head and said, "You're wrong. These two materials are too rare. It's difficult to understand their specific origins. So we've all made a mistake on this most basic question. The 10,000-year tree crystal is of the wood attribute, but the ancient Pure Land is not of the pure earth attribute. If it's not of the earth attribute, then what is it?" Lin was puzzled. Even if he did not understand its origin, how could the standard soil of the ancient Pure Land be of any other attribute? "I've read about the ancient Pure Land in my master's notes. Although its attributes were not clearly mentioned, it was mentioned that the ancient Pure Land usually only appears in the craters of ancient volcanoes." The king of junk said excitedly, "Now you understand. Although the ancient Pure Land has the earth attribute, it also has the fire attribute. Therefore, to a certain extent, there is a conflict between the attributes of the 10,000-year tree crystal and the wood attribute of the 10,000-year tree crystal." Only then did Lin understand. He nodded and said, "No wonder such a strange situation occurred. Under normal circumstances, if it was a simple conflict of attributes, it would have completely failed by now. It turns out that the ancient Pure Land's earth and fire attributes are both conflicting and compatible with the wood attribute of the 10,000-year tree crystal." "That's right. Fortunately, my mistake wasn't too fatal. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a chance to remedy it, and I would be even more ashamed to face you, Brother Lin," the king of junk said awkwardly. Chapter 4058. Don't worry, Brother Lin. Since we've found the root of the problem, I'm confident that I can succeed as long as we can solve the problem of the attribute conflict," the king of junk promised. "That's great, but how are we going to solve this problem now?" Lin asked. The process of forging could not be stopped halfway, and with the current situation, the lump inside could not even be considered a semi-finished product. It was even more impossible to take it out now. If everything goes as expected, the forging pool will continue to be in this state. However, to be on the safe side, it's better for me to stay here and keep an eye on it. Therefore, I can only trouble Brother Lin to find some materials to make up for it, so that we can continue forging," the king of junk said as he took out a pen and paper, then listed a list of materials and passed it to Lin. Lin took a glance and asked, "Are these materials common?" "Most of them are common, so we should be able to buy them directly. However, there are two that we'll have to try our luck. Fortunately, we're not in a rush, and I'll find a way to control it. Even if it takes longer, it won't be a problem. Being slow is also a stage of forging, so taking longer might not be a bad thing," the king of junk analyzed. "All right, I'll think of a way to make up for the materials. I'll leave it to you, Brother Wang," Lin Yi immediately set off. Hong Merchant Guild. After Hong Zhongyuan went to Middle Island to take up his post, it was now Si Haixiao's territory. At this moment, there were two familiar faces in the private room. They were Nan Tianba and Nan Tianmen. Shopkeeper Si, we have a presumptuous request. We hope you can help us find someone. Nan Tianmen and Nan Tianba looked at each other and pleaded. Oh, could it be about Lin Air? There's no news yet, but I've already sent people to investigate. Si Haixiao casually answered as he drank the high-quality spiritual tea. Actually, we already know Lin Air's true identity and his whereabouts. This guy is the Lin Yi I mentioned to you before. However, we're looking for someone else. You've met him once before. He's my unworthy martial nephew Yu Zhe. The Southern Heavenly Gate said awkwardly. He and Nan Tianba had already searched everywhere they could, but they still couldn't find any trace of Yu Zhe. They had no choice but to run over to ask Si Haixiao for help. After all, Si Haixiao was a supervisor. Letting him borrow the eyes and ears of the Hongying group to find out Yu Zhe's whereabouts was much better than relying on the two of them to run around blindly. Ask about Yu Zhe? Don't you know the whereabouts of your own martial nephew? Si Haixiao was taken aback. Since we already know that Lin Yi is Lin Yi II, we should think of a way to deal with Lin Yi first. Why bother looking for Yu Zhe? Sigh, shopkeeper Si, there's something you don't know. We only learned recently that the culprit that killed third brother wasn't Lin Yi, but Yu Zhe's rebellious disciple. The South Heaven Gate briefly explained the recent events to Si Haixiao. Such a complicated inside story made Si Haixiao click his tongue in wonder. Yu Zhe killing his teacher. Although it had caused a lot of commotion recently, it was mainly focused on the three great pavilions. It didn't spread much in the marketplace. Furthermore, he had been busy reorganizing the Hong Chamber of Commerce recently. In order to erase the traces left behind by Hong Zhong's many years of business, he had no time to care about this kind of gossip. I didn't think that this kid would actually be a traitor despite looking so much like a dog. Fine. This shopkeeper will send a message to the old partner of the Hongying group, who is in charge of the North Island, and let him investigate for you. Since the matter has become so big, the eyes and ears in the North Island should take the initiative to pay attention to Yu Zhe's whereabouts. After Si Haixiao said this, he immediately wrote a note and had someone send a letter with a bird. Since they were both in the North Island, the news spread very quickly. In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Si Haixiao received a reply. Unfortunately, the other party's reply was that they didn't receive any news regarding Yu Zhe's whereabouts. Nan Tianba and Southern Skygate were both extremely depressed. Now that the missing Yu Zhe had become the two brothers' laughingstock, if they let him go on like this, the prestige they had established in the Soaring Sky Pavilion would probably be completely gone. Seeing the two of them like this, Si Haixiao comforted them. Actually, you don't need to be too discouraged. That kid Yu Zhe can hide for a while, but can he hide forever? The Hongying group has so many eyes and ears in the North Island. As long as he appears, don't worry about not being able to find him. This is all just a matter of time. Also, isn't that Lin Yi ready-made? Although Yu Zhe killed Nan Tianyong, there's still a problem with him. Nan Tianba and Southern Skygate both nodded. We also know that Lin Yi isn't a good person. When he pretended to be second Lin and took away the starring stone, it was actually because he had bad intentions. Everything started because of him. Otherwise, third brother wouldn't have ended up being killed by his own disciple. That's right. So this shopkeeper is prepared to help you deal with him. Si Haixiao suddenly said. Huh. The two of them couldn't help but look at each other in surprise. Although Si Haixiao had previously agreed to help find second Lin, the perfunctory meaning behind it could be seen even if they were blind. Why did he suddenly take the initiative now? Don't be so surprised. These 2 days, your uncle, Nantion Polaris, just happened to send this shopkeeper a letter. He asked the shopkeeper to help him teach a lesson to an enemy. He made this enemy when he went to the secular world to be a guide. Guess who it is? Si Haixiao said with a playful expression. It can't be Lin Yi, right? The two of them instantly looked at each other. That's right, it's this Lin Yi. Speaking of which, this kid is really at odds with your family. In the secular world, he went against your uncle, and now he's going against the two of you. It's really rare to see a newcomer who dares to provoke others like this. Si Haishao laughed. Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate both had an expression as if they had seen a ghost. They immediately reacted and said, "Since there's a grudge against uncle, then we can't let this kid go. Let's do as shopkeeper C says and deal with Linny first." Si Haishao nodded and said, "Now that Hong Zhong has gone to the middle island, distant water can't put out a nearby fire. Moreover, it's said that he's also in trouble, so it's easy for us to deal with Lin Yi. However, we still need to plan this matter first and find a good opportunity. It's best if Lin Yi takes the initiative to come to us. Otherwise, as the shopkeeper of the northern island of the Hong Merchant Guild, it wouldn't be good for me to go to the welcoming pavilion to find him." Yes, shopkeeper C has thought things through. Southern Sky Gate agreed. Chapter 4059. Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Haha, the North Island is like this. There are no female cultivators here, so it can't be compared to the Middle Island. However, if shopkeeper C wants to play, we brothers know a good place. Oh, since I don't have anything to do, why don't we go and relax together? Si Haishao immediately became interested and suggested. That's great. Shopkeeper C, as the host, we haven't had a chance to welcome you. This time, we can be the host and treat you as a welcome. The two nodded. For them, Si Haishao was a good backer, and they needed to find a way to curry favor with him. Since Si Haishao was interested, it couldn't be any better. They only needed to spend some spiritual jades to get closer to such a person. This was something they couldn't ask for more. After coming to the North Island, Si Haishao had been busy eliminating the influence left by the previous Hong Zhong. After holding it in for so long, it was hard for him to restrain his desire. The three of them hit it off and immediately went out together. Although there weren't many female cultivators on the North Island, the place Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate brought Si Haishao to was the largest cultivator village around the three pavilions. The people here were all ordinary people. It was similar to the secular world, with restaurants, brothels, casinos, and other places of entertainment. Cultivators were humans too, with 7 emotions and 6 desires. Apart from cultivating, they still had various needs. When they needed to indulge themselves, they would often come to the cultivator village. Nan Tianba and the South Heaven Gate brothers had long been a frequent visitor here. There was only one common currency in the 5 great heavenly islands, and that was the spiritual jade. Since this was only a village where ordinary people lived, even the best brothel would not be able to afford such a small amount of money to the high and mighty cultivators. With just a few spiritual jades, one could easily play with the most beautiful and skilled female cultivators. Although they were just ordinary women and not superior female cultivators, if the quality wasn't good enough, quantity could make up for it. It was enough for Si Haishao to have fun. While Si Haishao and Nan Tianba were enjoying themselves in the cultivator village, Shanghai Laner, who was now grounded at home by Shanghai Tianhua, finally saw her best friend, Ning Xuefei, who came all the way from West Island. It was rare for the two girls to run into each other. Both of them cheered excitedly, adding a bit of liveliness to the usually tranquil Hualan house. They were also best friends who could talk about anything. Ning Xuefei and Han Jingjing were like-minded because of their similar hobbies, while she and Shangguan Laner were similar because of their similar personalities. Almost everything was a common topic between them. Come on, little Laner, quickly tell me about the rape. Oh, and about your kidnapping. You didn't explain it clearly in the letter. Ning Xuefei's eyes lit up with excitement, even though Shangguan Laner was heartless. When he heard this, his face darkened, and he said speechlessly, Fei, you came all the way here just to ask about this. Aren't you here to comfort me? Sob, I'm so sad. Aya, of course I'm here to comfort you, little Lan, but it's such a fun thing. As a best friend, don't you want to share it with me? I'm also concerned about you. Ning Xuefei rolled her eyes and quibbled. Alright. You always use the excuse of comforting people to rub salt into my wounds. I'm really defeated by you. Shangguan Laner could only surrender helplessly. Although Shangguan Laner deliberately pretended to be depressed, she could no longer hold back her smile after a while. She laughed and played together with Ning Xuefei. Being pestered by Ning Xuefei, Shangguan Laner told her everything that had happened recently in detail. Ning Xuefei was amazed. Shangguan Laner didn't say it in detail in the letter before. Especially when they heard that Little White took a giant scissors and wiped off Su Lingchong's penis. The two girls laughed back and forth, gave a thumbs up, and praised Little Curly Bear for being wise and capable. In the two things that Shangguan Laner had experienced recently, whether it was Su Lingchong's attempted rape or being kidnapped a few days ago, the protagonist was the same person, Lin Yi, in addition to herself. Why does the name Lin Yi sound so familiar? After hearing this, Ning Xuefei couldn't help scratching her head. After thinking hard for a long time, she suddenly patted her head and said, "By the way, I've heard this name long ago when I was in West Island." Really? Shangguan Laner couldn't help but be stunned. Although she liked her junior brother very much, Lin Yi was just a newcomer after all. If he was a little famous in the 3 pavilions of the North Island, it was reasonable, but even Ning Xuefei, who was far away in West Island, had heard of him. This was impossible, right? It's true. I told you in the letter before that I have a good friend from the secular world. Her name is Han Jingjing. She often talks about Lin Yi to me, but whether this Lin Yi is the same person as the Lin Yi you mentioned, I don't know. Ning Xuefei tilted her head and said, "Hey, I remember that junior brother is also from the secular world. Is the Lin Yi he mentioned to your friend really the same person?" Shangguan Laner thought about it, and suddenly felt that it was very possible. She immediately suggested with great interest, "Why don't we go to ask junior brother now?" He little Lan aren't you grounded by your grandfather now? How can you go out?" Ning Xuefei said with a smile. "If I am alone, Grandpa will definitely not let me go out. But now you are here, Feifei. As the host, I will take you out to play. He will definitely agree," Shangguan Laner said with confidence. She was bored at home these days, and wanted to take the opportunity to sneak out to play. "Okay, but before looking for Lin Yi, I want to go to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce first," Ning Xuefei said. "Why do you want to go to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce? To buy something? Didn't you just go to the auction in the far North Island recently?" Shangguan Laner asked curiously. "No, I'm going to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce to find a young man." Ning Xuefei's mouth curved slightly like a kitten. Looking for a young man? Shangguan Laner was even more puzzled. She looked at Ning Xuefei up and down and asked curiously, "Feifei, which young man are you looking for? Why are you looking for him?" "I won't tell you now. I will tell you when I find him," Ning Xuefei said mysteriously. "You will know when the time comes. He has a lot of good things in his hands." Chapter 4060. Just as she had said, although Shangguan Tianhua had grounded her, he couldn't possibly ground Ning Xuefei, who had come all the way from afar as well. After hearing their words, she immediately nodded in agreement. Although there had been a kidnapping incident not long ago, this was still the territory of the 3 pavilions in the North Island. As long as precautions were taken, there was no need to worry about their personal safety. The two immediately went out with the Little Curly Bear, and went straight to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, in the inner street of the marketplace. Today happened to be the opening day of the inner street. They didn't even need to reveal their identities, and directly walked into the gate of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, along with the crowd. On the North Island, female cultivators were extremely rare, especially the 2 women who were rare beauties. Even if they were mixed in the noisy crowd, no matter where they went, they would naturally become the focus of the audience. As soon as the 2 of them walked into the Hong Chamber of Commerce, a sharp-eyed shop assistant abandoned the other customers and welcomed them with a face full of joy. "Ladies, what treasures are you looking to buy? Do you want me to show you around the shop?" "No, I'm looking for a little shop assistant of your Hong's Chamber of Commerce," Ning Xuefei said impatiently. "Little shop assistant? I'm a little shop assistant, right? What can I do for you, miss?" The shop assistant was slightly stunned, and then quickly smiled attentively. Such a beautiful woman came to find him. Was he going to have good luck with women today? Secretly pinching Laner, who was snickering, Ning Xuefei rolled her eyes speechlessly and curled her lips. I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for another little shop assistant. As they spoke, Ning Xuefei and Laner, who were already the center of attention, became the focus of the audience. Everyone present couldn't help but look at each other. Two drooling beauties were looking for a little shop assistant. What was going on? Was this what people said? Fresh flowers are destined to be inserted in cow dung. Looking for a little shop assistant? Si Haixiao had just come back at this moment, although he was already drunk. But his strength meant that no matter how drunk he wouldn't fall down directly. Hearing the sweet female voice coming from the crowd downstairs, he immediately poked his head out of the private room on the second floor in a trance. After seeing Ning Xuefei and Laner, Si Haixiao's eyes instantly widened. What the fuck? These two girls were simply the best. Although Nan Tianba and the Southern Heaven Gate brothers had accompanied him to the brothel, they were only ordinary women after all. They could not be compared to the female cultivators on the Middle Island. They were on a completely different level, so Si Haixiao was not able to enjoy himself to the fullest. However, he did not expect that the moment he returned to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Si Haixiao's appetite was immediately aroused when he found these two exquisite girls that were rarely seen in Nakajima. He looked at the two girls lecherously while pinching his chin and muttering, "You're looking for a young man? Why did he look for a young waiter? Could it be that these two women are the mistresses of some young waiter?" At this moment, Si Haixiao was both drunk and lustful. As he thought about it in a daze, he immediately felt that it was highly possible. He had been busy dealing with the internal affairs of the three great pavilions during this period of time, and hadn't officially walked around the three great pavilions. It was not surprising that he did not know Shangguan Laner. As far as he knew, there were no female cultivators on the North Island, so he ruled out the possibility that the two women were cultivators of the three pavilions. Since these two girls were looking for some bullshit young waiter, then they were definitely mistresses. Damn it! Just which fellow was it that was so lucky to get such a stunning and exquisite chick? What a waste of God's gifts. Even a manager like me doesn't have such luck with women. Thinking of this, Si Haixiao could not help but feel lustful. These two women were definitely ordinary women who had not seen much of the world. Since they were interested in a mere young waiter, then wouldn't it just be a matter of a word for him to get them into bed? Wahahaha. God wants me to enjoy my luck with women. I really can't stop it. Si Haixiao immediately forced himself to calm down and couldn't wait to get up and walk downstairs. At the same time, he was still imagining the wonderful scene of two stunning beauties serving him together in his mind. That feeling was simply killing him. Just then, Lenny suddenly appeared in the crowd at the door. Lenny came here to buy the supplementary materials that the king of junk had told him before. Although Hong Zhong was no longer here, these were basically things that could be bought normally, not precious treasures like the star inkstone that could only be found by chance. Therefore, he thought that Si Haixiao would not make things difficult for him for such a small matter. Of course, if Si Haixiao really did this, Lenny could also go to other places to buy them, such as asking Chen Heihu for help. However, Chen Heihu's business was not as big as that of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce. Even if he was willing to help, many materials were not in stock, and he had to find someone to buy them temporarily, which was a little troublesome. As soon as he entered the door, Lenny noticed the two women, Ning Xuefei and Shangguan Laner, who had become the focus of the crowd. The sharp-eyed little curly bear also found Lenny at once, and directly jumped over everyone's head and jumped onto Lin Yi's shoulder. "Little buddy, you are here. I was just looking for you." Ning Xuefei's eyes suddenly lit up, and she squeezed over with Shanghai Laner. Shanghai Laner had a strange expression. She pointed at Ning Xuefei, and then pointed at Lin Yi. "Quack. He is the little buddy you are looking for. How could it be so coincidental? What's wrong?" Ning Xuefei looked at Shanghai Laner with a puzzled look. Shanghai Laner was stunned for a moment, and then said incredulously, "Your little buddy is actually my little junior brother Lin Yi that I told you about." "Are you serious? How could this be?" Ning Xuefei was taken aback when she heard the words. Lenny looked at Ning Xuefei, and he was also very surprised. How did she come here? She even knows Shanghai Lenu? Besides being surprised, he couldn't help but secretly wonder. How could this world be so small? I can even encounter such a thing. However, noticing the strange gazes of other people, Lenny suddenly realized that there were too many people in this place. It was better to ask the two women to go out and change to a quieter place to talk. However, before waiting for Lenny to speak, Si Haishao had already forced the crowd and squeezed over with the smell of alcohol. Si Haishao was originally obsessed with lust. Now that he saw the sudden appearance of Lin Yi, he was even more excited. Although he hadn't met Lin Yi before, he had seen Lin Yi's portrait, and the words of Shanghai Laner had also confirmed Lin Yi's identity for him. Previously, he was still thinking about how to find a way to trick Lin Yi out. He didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, Lin Yi actually took the initiative to come to him. Chapter 4061. How could this brat Lin Yi be able to obtain these two exquisite beauties? Today, whether it was for official or personal reasons, Si Haishao felt that he had to make Lin Yi kneel. Lin Yi, as a newcomer to the welcoming pavilion, you actually disobeyed the rules. You actually dared to bring two brothel girls out in broad daylight and swaggered around in front of my Hong Merchant Guild. Where do you think the image of the three great pavilions is? Si Haishao reprimanded him with a righteous expression. Unfortunately, his pair of perverted eyes that occasionally glanced at the two girls betrayed his true nature. Previously, when he went to the brothel to seek pleasure, he heard Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate mention that the three great pavilions were extremely strict with their disciples. They would never allow them to go out and find brothel girls. Anyone who disobeyed would be severely punished. Of course, rules were rules. They were mainly targeted at newcomers. People like Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate never took these rules seriously. As long as they weren't caught on the spot, then it was useless. Because he had just returned from the brothel, Si Haishao subconsciously thought of the two girls as brothel girls. After all, even if they were Lin Yi's girlfriends, there would only be one of them. How could there be two of them together? No matter what, Lin Yi was a cultivator. It was impossible for him to find an ordinary girl as his partner. At the very least, he would find a female cultivator. However, female cultivators were very arrogant. Even Si Haishao only had one female cultivator as his wife. Only those brothel girls could do something like threesome. However, brothel girls were more daring and had more tricks up their sleeves. They could even do something more open than this. He had just played 1 against 3. What did you say? I advise you to keep your mouth clean. Be careful of the trouble that comes from your mouth. Lin Yi heard this and his aura turned cold. Oh, with your insignificant strength, you still dare to pretend to be a tough guy in front of me? Si Haishao suddenly laughed wildly. He pointed at Lin Yi and sneered. Guest expert, help this shopkeeper suppress him. Inform the welcoming pavilion's pavilion master to come and pick him up. Just as he finished speaking, 4 unfathomable figures suddenly appeared around Lin Yi without warning, surrounding him tightly in the center. Lin Yi's heart tightened. These 4 guest experts were completely different from those he had seen before. In the Hong Chamber of Commerce, although the guest experts were hired by the Chamber of Commerce, there were also designated assistants. The original 4 guest experts had already followed Hongzhong to Middle Island. It was an unfamiliar face who only obeyed Si Haishao's orders. However, even if the person was different, to be able to become a guest expert of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he would at least be an expert above the gold core stage. This was beyond doubt. Seeing that Lin Yi did not dare to make a move, Si Haishao smiled even more complacently. He turned his head to look at the 2 women lecherously and said, These 2 beauties, didn't you come out to sell your goods for spirit jades? This shopkeeper has plenty of them. Furthermore, I guarantee that you will give more than that poor brat. Why don't you follow me in 2 days? The situation suddenly changed. Ning Xuefei and Shangguan Laner were still a little confused at first, but now that they were so openly teased by the old man in public, they finally reacted. You old bastard! What did you say I am? Shangguan Laner could not help but gnash her teeth in anger. You actually said that we are prostitutes? I will fight with you. Ning Xuefei was so angry that her pretty face turned red. Regardless of everything, she directly attacked Si Haixiao. The two of them, in terms of status, were at the level of little princesses. They were noble people, who could not bear the slightest grievance. Now they were being humiliated as prostitutes in public. Seeing that the two women actually dared to attack him, Si Haixiao could not help but be stunned. He subconsciously felt that something was wrong. However, he could not figure out what was wrong. He immediately greeted them with an obscene smile. Haha, you have quite a character. This shopkeeper likes little chilies like you. Anyway, we are out to sell our goods. Don't tell me that if that brat Linny can play, I can't. Si Haixiao said as he stretched out his hand to touch Ning Xuefei and Shangguan Laner. However, before he could succeed, 5 figures suddenly flashed behind the two women. Si Haixiao did not see what was going on. His face was directly kicked, and he was sent flying to the wall more than 10 feet away. The surrounding people quickly moved to the side. The 4 guest experts saw that the situation was not good. They immediately left Lin Yi and rushed in front of Si Haixiao, confronting the 5 people who appeared out of nowhere. As a result, the momentum of each side was actually equal. These 5 people, each of them was actually a golden core stage expert. Even if they did not count the tsunami, there were already 9 golden core stage experts confronting each other at this moment, which really shocked the surrounding audience. Golden core stage experts had always been a rare existence. How could there suddenly be so many of them? In a trance, there was a feeling that golden core stage experts were everywhere. These people are the core disciples of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Someone in the crowd suddenly exclaimed in a low voice. The clothes of the disciples of the 3 pavilions were different. As long as you paid a little attention, you could recognize them at a glance. The 4 guest experts of the Hong Chamber of Commerce suddenly felt a thump in their hearts. 4 against 5, they were originally at a disadvantage and did not dare to act rashly. If the other party was really a core disciple of Soaring Sky Pavilion, then they were a complete local bully. Once things got out of hand, they could not afford to provoke them at all. These 5 masters of Soaring Sky Pavilion were naturally arranged by Shangguan Tianhua. Shangguan Laner had just been kidnapped not long ago. Even if he, as a grandfather, was broad-minded, it was impossible for him not to take any precautions. What's more, now that Ning Xuefei, the real princess of West Island, had come, it was even more necessary to protect her. Otherwise, if Ning Xuefei had a little problem here, it would directly be a crisis for the 2 islands. If it was not handled properly, it was not impossible to trigger a war between the 2 islands, so they had to be careful. When the 2 sides confronted each other, the leader of the 5 masters of Soaring Sky Pavilion looked coldly at the 4 guest officials opposite him and said, "How dare you? These 2 ladies, one is the daughter of the owner of West Island, and the other is the granddaughter of the master of Soaring Sky Pavilion. You dare to insult them as prostitutes in public, and even touch them. I really don't know why the Hong Chamber of Commerce would send such stupid scum to be the shopkeeper. I must give an explanation to the big shot above me. If you dare to stop me, come and try." After that, the master of Soaring Sky Pavilion shook his body, and the next moment, he appeared directly above Si Haixiao's head. Without saying a word, he grabbed Si Haixiao's neck with one hand and lifted him into the air. The 4 guest experts were shocked by the information revealed by his words, and did not dare to move for a long time. They could only watch Si Haixiao being abused. Chapter 4062. The 4 guests were so scared that they didn't dare to move. As for Si Haixiao himself, although he was tipsy and dizzy, he still vaguely heard the words West Island Lord and Master of Soaring Sky Pavilion. He was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat, and his tipsy feeling was mostly gone. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to wake up. His opponent's strength was much higher than his, and he didn't have any chance to resist at all. At this time, even begging for mercy was just wishful thinking. Just now, when he was blinded by lust, he had completely offended the 2 women, and even the big shots behind them. Under everyone's gaze, In front of the 4 guests of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, this master of Soaring Sky Pavilion began to ravage Si Haishao bit by bit. Crack, crack, crack. Under everyone's gaze, every bone and meridian in Si Haishao's body was mercilessly destroyed by a powerful and overbearing true qi, until it was completely broken. At first, Si Haishao still had the strength to scream, but after a while, he didn't even have the strength to scream. In everyone's eyes, he was like a duck that had been strangled. The blue veins on his forehead stood out, and he desperately screamed, but he couldn't make any sound. Looking at this scene, everyone whispered to each other. Regarding Si Haishao's tragic end, they could only say 3 words: sad, ridiculous, and pitiful. Bang! The master of Soaring Sky Pavilion casually threw Si Haishao, who had fainted, on the ground, and turned to the 2 women for instructions. Miss Ning, Miss Shangguan, do you want to take this person back and cure him? Although the other party was the manager of a branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, and under normal circumstances, except for the top management of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's headquarters, no one else had the right to punish him. But today's matter involved the 2 misses of West Island and Soaring Sky Pavilion, so Si Haishao had only himself to blame. Even if they took him back and killed him, the Hong Chamber of Commerce didn't have the face to stop it. Hearing this, Shanghai Laner and Ning Xuefei looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. They shook their heads in unison. Both of them were not ruthless people. Although this old bastard was extremely hateful, it was already miserable enough that he was tortured to this extent in public. Anyway, he did not take advantage of them, so there was no need to pursue him relentlessly. If that's the case, then I'll spare his dog life for now. The expert from the Soaring Sky Pavilion nodded, and then retreated behind the 2 women with a solemn expression. Just like the others, Linny was speechless when he saw Si Haishao gasping for air on the ground. The previously high and mighty shopkeeper of the Hong Chamber of Commerce was now like a dead dog. After what happened today, the Hong Chamber of Commerce behind him would not protect him. In order to explain to West Island and Rising Sky Pavilion, they would even punish Si Haishao severely. In short, Si Haishao, the newly appointed shopkeeper, had only been in high spirits for a few days, but in the blink of an eye, he was finished. Little junior brother, let's go and find a place to have a good talk with me. When exactly did you become a staff member of the Hong Chamber of Commerce? Why didn't I know about it at all? Shangguan Laner pouted gloomily. The matter of the northernmost island, Linny didn't tell her, and Ning Xuefei kept her in suspense. She was kept in the dark from the beginning, and became an outsider. Compared to being slandered by Si Haishao as a prostitute, this matter was much more serious. Yes, I also have something very important to ask you. Yes, I also have something very important to ask you. Ning Xuefei immediately put aside the unhappiness just now and pulled Linny excitedly. Then okay. Linny nodded helplessly. Anyway, seeing that the Hong Chamber of Commerce was in a mess, he couldn't buy anything for a while, so he could only go with these 2 young ladies for the time being. Being surrounded by 2 beautiful young ladies on both sides, Lin Yi's treatment really made the people around him drool with envy, especially when they thought of the rich backgrounds of these 2 women. They were even more jealous. Any one of them would be a winner in life with both power and beauty, let alone 1 against 2. This kid looked thin and weak. He didn't look like an expert, and there was nothing special about him. How could he be favored by the heavens? Of course, jealousy was just jealousy. Looking at the 5 Soaring Sky Pavilion Gold Core stage experts scattered around the 2 women, with Si Haishao's bloody example in front of them, no matter how unbalanced they were, they could only watch helplessly, and did not dare to make the slightest movement. Compared to Lin Yi's blessing of having 2 women, Si Haishao's ending was really bitter tears. When he woke up from the unbearable pain all over his body, a whole day had passed. When he finally realized the situation he was in, he was so shocked that he couldn't help but gasp. As the manager of the North Island branch of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, Si Haishao was actually thrown on the street of the inner street of the market and left to fend for himself. What the fuck? Are you all dead? How dare you treat me like this? Today, I will kick all of you out. Si Haixiao's old face suddenly turned red when he was looked up and down by the strange eyes of passers-by, and he cursed angrily. Even if he made such a stupid mistake as yesterday, he was still a manager after all, and it was impossible for him to end up like a beggar on the street. Si Haixiao immediately cursed and tried to get up, but after struggling for a few times, he found that he could not stand up at all. Then he realized that the tendons in his limbs had been broken by someone with true qi, and he was now a useless man. But even so, Si Haixiao still did not lose his usual arrogance. He shouted to the passers-by, "Whoever comes over and carries me to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, I will give you a big reward." If what he said was on the open day of the inner street yesterday, maybe some passers-by who did not know the truth would be willing to give it a try. But now it was not the open day, and those who could come and go here were all people of status in the North Island. Si Haixiao's stupid feat yesterday had already been spread by word of mouth, and no one would pay attention to such a blind fool. After shouting for a long time, seeing that the passers-by were still indifferent, Si Haixiao finally stopped shouting in despair. But he did not give up. Since no one was willing to carry him, he would climb over by himself. The inner street was so big that even if he climbed all the way from the street to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the distance was not too far. Once he arrived at the Hong Chamber of Commerce, it would be his territory. Under the gazes of the onlookers, Si Haixiao gritted his teeth and forced his way to the entrance of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. However, his subordinates, who were incomparably fawning over him, were only slightly stunned when they saw him. Then they immediately looked away, as if they did not see him. Chapter 4063. However, the people in the store just looked at each other, and then went on with their own business, with no intention of helping Si Haixiao at all. Humph. Good. Very good. Today I've seen the fickleness of human nature. Didn't you see that my tendons and meridians were broken? So you think I'm a useless person? Let me tell you, I can recover from this injury by taking the holy healing medicine. Even if I can't, I'm still your shopkeeper, and your life and death are still in my hands. Very good, I've seen your performance. None of you will have a good ending. Si Haixiao kept scolding. At this time, the young man who was the closest to him, and was often beaten by him a few days ago, suddenly said, "I don't know if we will have a good ending, but you definitely won't. Your matter has been passed to the headquarters yesterday, and the higher-ups of the headquarters have already dealt with you. In order to give a satisfactory explanation to the Master of West Island and the Master of Soaring Pavilion, you have been completely removed from the Hong Consortium of Chamber of Commerce and will never be employed again." What? That's impossible. You're talking nonsense. How dare you lie to me? Do you want to die? Si Haixiao's body shook in disbelief, and then he suddenly roared crazily. Lie to you? Open your dog eyes wide, and take a good look before saying anything. A short-lived branch manager, like you, is truly unprecedented in the history of our Hong Chamber of Commerce. Your Excellency can really be considered as the first person in history. The shop assistant sneered disdainfully, and pointed at a notice pasted in the middle of the wall. It clearly stated the punishment of Si Haixiao by the higher-ups of Middle Island of the Hong Consortium of Chamber of Commerce, and the seal was indeed the unique seal of the headquarters. In an instant, Si Haixiao felt like he was struck by lightning, and his mind went blank. Just because of a drunken flirtation, the shopkeeper Fong, who was still high and mighty yesterday, was fired by the Hong Consortium of Chamber of Commerce forever? Even though Si Haixiao was lying at the door in a daze, the people of the Hong Consortium of Chamber of Commerce didn't care about him. They continued to do their own things. A new ruler brings a new minister. What they needed to think about now was when the new shopkeeper would arrive. As for an idiot like Si Haixiao, they didn't care about him. In just a short moment, Si Haixiao seemed to have aged a few decades. He raised his head with great difficulty and said, "Even though I'm no longer your shopkeeper, I'm still your esteemed customer since I'm here to buy medicine. I'm here to buy healing medicine, so I'm still your esteemed customer. Is this how you treat your honored guests?" The shop assistant who was closest to him couldn't help but sneer. Honored guest. Could it be that not only are your tendons and meridians crippled, but your brain is also crippled? Oh right, to be able to do something as stupid as what you did yesterday. You don't have any brains to begin with. Then, I shall be merciful and give you a reminder. I'm sorry, but you've already been blacklisted by the Hong Chamber of Commerce. No matter if you go to the branch or the headquarters. We won't accept you. Si Haishao was completely speechless. He stared helplessly at the healing elixirs on the display case. A good dog doesn't block the way. I advise you to find another place to lie down. Otherwise, if you affect the business of our Hong Chamber of Commerce, you won't be able to bear the consequences. The shop assistant sneered with an unfriendly expression. Si Haishao clenched his teeth. If it was in the past, he would have killed this fellow with a slap. It was a pity that he was a nobody now. Furthermore, he was a cripple who couldn't even walk. No matter how indignant he was, he could only swallow his anger for the time being. He crawled out of the Hong Chamber of Commerce silently. Si Haishao didn't give up just like that. He turned and crawled towards the Chamber of Commerce next to him. His top priority now was to quickly buy healing elixirs to treat his injuries. Even if he couldn't treat them in a short period of time, he had to at least stabilize his injuries and prevent them from worsening. The Hong Chamber of Commerce wasn't far away. It was the wealthy metropolis. Although their foundations were slightly weaker than the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the difference was limited. Si Haishao shamelessly crawled all the way to the wealthy metropolis. He couldn't care less about the strange gazes of the people around him. He shouted impatiently, "Someone quickly prepare a level 5 meridian unblocking pill for me." All the tendons and meridians in his body had been shattered by someone's true qi. Only a level 5 meridian unblocking pill had a chance of treating such injuries. The employees of the wealthy metropolis were stunned. After whispering to each other, they didn't dare to make the decision on their own. They immediately invited Manager Hao out. "Oh, isn't this the new manager see next door? What a rare guest. May I know what orders you have for my humble shop today?" Manager Hao appeared to be warm on the surface, but everyone could see the hint of mockery hidden in his eyes. Furthermore, he had no intention of helping Si Haishao up from the start. Si Haishao suppressed his anger and said, "I need a level 5 meridian unblocking pill. Prepare it for me." "A level 5 meridian unblocking pill? Ha, this is a rare big deal." Manager Hao raised his eyebrows. Then he said regretfully, "It's a pity that our humble shop doesn't have a level 5 meridian unblocking pill in stock at the moment." "What? No stock?" Si Haishao almost vomited blood when he heard that. Whether he could recover from his injuries and find a chance to make a comeback depended entirely on this level 5 meridian unblocking pill. How could the wealthy metropolis not have it? Unbeknownst to him, it wasn't that the wealthy metropolis did not have it in stock. It was just that Manager Hao didn't want to sell it to him on purpose. After winning the last auction in the extreme North Island, the Hong Chamber of Commerce could be said to be like the sun at high noon. Even the wealthy families would have to tolerate such a competitor. There was no need to offend the Hong Chamber of Commerce for a stupid trash like Si Haishao, and it was not worth it. If we don't have a level 5 meridian unblocking pill, then there should be a level 4 great recovery pill, right? Si Haishao didn't want to give up. Although the level 4 great recovery pill was not as effective as the level 5 meridian unblocking pill, it could at least stabilize his injuries. Unexpectedly, Manager Hao shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, we don't have it either. Someone bought it out of stock some time ago." "You don't have it either?" Si Haishao was stunned. If it was worse than a level 4 great recovery pill, other healing pills would not have any effect on his current injuries. Si Haishao had no choice but to crawl out of the wealthy metropolis and turn to other merchant unions. His purpose was obvious. He was still looking to buy a level 5 meridian unblocking pill and a level 4 great recovery pill. However, the reply that the other merchant unions received was the same. They were all out of stock. This time, no matter how slow Si Haishao's brain was, he finally realized that something was wrong. These merchant unions were obviously looking out for the Hong Merchant Union's face. They didn't dare to sell to him at all. Chapter 4064. However, Si Haishao did not give up. Even if he had to crawl all the way, he had to ask all the chambers of commerce in the inner street. He did not believe that all the chambers of commerce would ignore the large amount of spiritual jades and follow the Hong Consortium's lead. Finally, when Si Haishao climbed to the point of exhaustion and was about to give up, he saw a fourth-grade Great Recovery pill on the display of a store called the Central Chamber of Commerce. Si Haishao was overjoyed. Even if there was no fifth-grade Meridian Unblocking pill, this fourth-grade Great Recovery pill was a lifesaver for him. Si Haishao hurriedly crawled into the door of the Central Chamber of Commerce. He pointed at the display case and shouted, "Guards, I want that fourth-grade Great Recovery pill. It's on display. You can't possibly lie and pretend that you don't have it in stock, right?" The manager looked at him in surprise and smiled. "Sir, you must be joking. This is business that comes knocking on your door. As a businessman, how can I reject it? Since you want it, I'll get someone to pack it up for you. As for the method of payment, would you like to swipe the spiritual jade card? Or, of course." Si Haishao took out the spiritual jade card from his bosom with great difficulty and handed it over to the steward. He was secretly rejoicing in his heart. Fortunately, he had earned a lot of spiritual jades over the years. This was the capital for him to stage a comeback in the future. However, a moment later Si Haishao was dumbfounded. The spiritual jade card had been frozen and could not be swiped at all. This news caused Si Haishao to spit out a mouthful of blood in front of everyone. All of his spirit jades were on this spirit jade card. This was his entire fortune and his life. Not only was he tortured into a cripple, but he could not even use the spiritual jade card that was his last hope. Si Haishao almost fainted in front of the Central Chamber of Commerce in despair. Gathering his last bit of spirit, Si Haishao crawled out of the door in a daze. However, he did not know where to go. There was no way out. This time he really didn't have any ideas. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from beside him. "If you want the elixir, follow me." Si Haishao looked up in the direction of the voice and found that the person who spoke was a mysterious person wearing a black windbreaker. Even his face was covered by a black bamboo hat, making it impossible to see his face clearly. "Are you talking to me?" Si Haishao had already lost all hope. At this moment, he was like a drowning man grasping at his last life-saving straw. The mysterious man did not reply, but just lowered his head and gave him a meaningful look. Then he walked to the side. Si Haishao was confused, but he still clenched his teeth and followed after them with great effort, hoping to get lucky. In any case, he was nothing now, and he was penniless. He was a complete cripple with a rotten life. There was nothing to be afraid of. As if he was waiting for Si Haishao, the mysterious man deliberately walked very slowly. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they finally stopped in front of a grand and luxurious tea house, and it was called the Central Tea Party. Si Haishao couldn't help but feel puzzled. Look at this name. Could it be that it was opened by the same company as the Central Chamber of Commerce? Speaking of which, as the former Four Directions supervisor of Hongying Group, Si Haishao had specially investigated this Central Chamber of Commerce before he came to North Island. This was a business that had only recently risen to prominence. However, in just a few months, they quickly occupied all the islands, even the Middle Island where the competition was the fiercest. Their Chamber of Commerce appeared at the same time. Si Haishao used the Hongying Group's intelligence system, but in the end, he still could not find out the owner behind the Central Chamber of Commerce. He only knew that this person was very mysterious and had a very terrifying power. The Central Chamber of Commerce was not like the other chambers of commerce, which grew slowly from small to large. It gave people the feeling that it had grown from nothing to something in just a few days. Suddenly, it was like a spring breeze. Thousands of pear trees bloomed, and suddenly, it was all over the 5 main islands of Heaven stage. He followed the mysterious man all the way into an elegant private room. Seeing that the mysterious man sat down and faced him, Si Haishao braced himself and said nervously, "You were looking for me?" Before he finished his sentence, the mysterious man did not speak, but took out a grade 5 Meridian conduit elixir and placed it on the table in front of Si Haishao. This is for me. Si Haishao couldn't help but swallow his saliva, his eyes shining as he stared at the grade 5 Meridian Conduit elixir in front of him. This was the only elixir that could save his life now. However, Si Haishao was not a fool. No matter how much he desired it, he dared not reach out to take the elixir. He could only rub his hands awkwardly and say, I don't have spiritual jade. You don't need spiritual jade. I'll give it to you, the mysterious man said calmly. Si Haishao was elated, but he still suppressed his greed and said, I think that I have no value now. I wonder if you have value. You just haven't realized it, the mysterious man interrupted. Oh, Si Haishao was stunned, not understanding what the other party meant. As long as you promise to work for me wholeheartedly, this grade 5 Meridian Conduit elixir will be yours, the mysterious man stated. All right, Si Haishao agreed without hesitation. He had nothing left now. No matter what he did for the mysterious man in the future, it would be better than being a cripple waiting for death. The mysterious man nodded in satisfaction and said, I heard that you started out in the intelligence department. Not bad. I have an organization in my hands, and I'll hand it over to you in the future. Oh, I'll take charge? What do I need to do? Si Haishao's eyes lit up. The mysterious man smiled faintly and said, It's very simple. Help me find some people with potential but evil intentions. For example, people like you. Si Haishao suddenly felt that his brain was not working properly. It was easy to understand finding people with potential. But evil intentions? What kind of request was that? There's no need to ask why. As long as you agree, I'll give you a brand new future. Your status won't be lower than the manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. As for the power, it'll be beyond your imagination. The mysterious man's tone was calm, but it sounded strangely enticing to Si Haishao. All right, I agree. Si Haishao nodded immediately. Very good. From today onwards, you'll be the manager of the Chamber of Commerce in the North Island. Of course, this is only your public identity. As for your secret identity, it's the team leader of the intelligence team in the North Island. The mysterious man said calmly. Even though Si Haishao had already thought of countless possibilities in his mind, he could not help but be shocked when he heard the mysterious man's words. Chapter 4065. One simple sentence from the other party, and Si Haishao became a shopkeeper again. What's more, he became the leader of the intelligence team. Life was indeed unpredictable. This great rise and fall had come too quickly. Just as Si Haishao was so shocked that he didn't know what to say, the mysterious man took out another bottle and placed it beside the Great Meridian Channel unblocking pill. He said, Drink this bottle of medicinal liquid now. It won't affect your body, but you have to take the antidote once a month. If you don't have any ulterior motives, I will give you the antidote regularly. Si Haishao's heart sank. There was no free lunch in this world. The mysterious man gave him such a huge benefit, but there were conditions. There's no point in hesitating. Do you think that I'll let you leave this room alive if you don't agree after I've said so much to you? As he spoke, a towering aura erupted from the mysterious man, causing the entire tea party to tremble. Even with Si Haishao's experience, he was still dumbfounded by this terrifying aura that he had never seen before. Not to mention that he was now a cripple. Even if he was at his peak, he would probably be no stronger than an ant in front of this mysterious person. Si Haishao had no choice. Since things had come to this, he could only crawl to the table, pick up the bottle of medicinal liquid, and drink it. He didn't dare to have any ulterior motives. You're quite sensible. Go and have a good rest. Go officially to the Central Chamber of Commerce tomorrow. The mysterious man waved his hand lightly. Yes. I'll take my leave. Si Haishao excitedly took the Meridian Channel conduit pill and kowtowed to the mysterious man. He crawled backward out of the private room. There was already a servant waiting at the door to help him change, shower, and recuperate. After Si Haishao left, the door inside the private room suddenly opened automatically without any warning. The mysterious man's domineering aura dissipated instantly, He kowtowed respectfully to the private room inside, not daring to cross the line. It's settled. He'll officially take office tomorrow. I'll personally supervise him during this period, the mysterious man said respectfully. All right, you may leave. A woman's voice came from inside the private room. Yesterday, after leaving the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yi and the two ladies found a clean and tidy restaurant. Although it was far from being as high-class as the Soaring Sky Pavilion's splendid sun house, and it didn't have spirit energy delicacies that easily cost hundreds of spirit jades, it was just some ordinary dishes that had nothing to do with cultivation. However, it was still very delicious, and it had the warmth of a home. The 5 Soaring Sky Pavilion core disciples had been following the 3 of them, constantly monitoring everyone's movements. With Si Haixiao's appearance, they had to be extra vigilant. It would be a dereliction of duty if another blind person came to disturb the mood of the 2 young misses. However, under the strong request of Shengguan Laner and Ning Xuefei, they did not enter the private room. They could only be on standby in the surrounding areas. Only Lin Yi and the 2 women were left in the private room. There was also a little curly bear who was busy eating and drinking. I didn't dare to ask more last time in a hurry. It turns out to be Miss Ning of West Island. How disrespectful. Regarding the matter of the northernmost island, many thanks for your help. I can't thank you enough. Engrave it in my heart. Lin Yi raised his glass and thanked Ning Xuefei. Aya, if I knew you were Lin Yi, I would have saved you even more. This is what I should do. Ning Xuefei's lips curled into a meaningful smile. Lin Yi was slightly stunned when he heard this. He couldn't help but look at Shengguan Laner. He thought that she said this because she was Shengguan Laner's best friend. Love me, love my dog. Ning Xuefei smiled slightly. When they were on the northernmost island, she didn't know about the matter between Shengguan Laner and Lin Yi. Her words were referring to her other best friend, Han Jingjing. After the contact on the road just now, she could be sure that this was the Lin Yi that Han Jingjing had been yearning for day and night. However, she didn't want to break the window paper for such a fun thing. It would be good to wait until the time to give them a big surprise. Well, you two don't have to keep me in suspense anymore. Little fellow, what happened? Quickly tell me honestly. Shengguan Laner couldn't wait to urge. Lin Yi and Ning Xuefei looked at each other and no longer hid it. They talked about the matter in the northernmost island to her. After listening to the encounter between the two, Shengguan Laner was amazed for a long time. She couldn't help but sigh that the world was really too small. They could even know each other like this. But then she wondered, little junior brother, how did you get injured at that time? Is the northernmost island so chaotic? Yeah, I wanted to ask this question too. Lin Yi, you were injured quite badly at that time. Ning Xuefei said curiously. Although she had a guess, it was just a guess. Lin Yi hesitated for a while. But thinking that these two weren't outsiders and had a close relationship with him, they wouldn't betray him. He lowered his voice and admitted, Miss Ning, you must have heard about what happened that night. Zheng Tianjie died because of a cauldron explosion. Actually, it was my doing. Ah, the 2 women were shocked when they heard this. Zheng Tianjie's status was not much inferior to theirs. His death had caused quite a stir in the past. According to the elders in the family, if it wasn't for the Dan god Zhang Liju personally coming out and confirming that this guy died because of his cauldron explosion, Zheng Dongjue would have sent out the elites of Zhongdao's Dan Hall. They didn't expect that the cause of such a huge incident was Lin Yi. After being stunned for a while, Shengguan Laner suddenly praised him excitedly. Little junior brother, you're really amazing. Zheng Dongjue was someone Grandpa met when he brought me to Zhongdao. He's not a good person. I heard that a lot of girls in Zhongdao were harassed by him. Little junior brother, you're doing the people a favor. Ning Xuefei asked curiously. Then why did you kill him? Oh, I know, it must be because he saw that you had so many elixirs that you couldn't buy even if you bought them. So he wanted to rob them. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head. That's not it. Miss Ning should have an impression of my conflict with him. I bid against him at the auction and offended him. He didn't plan on sharing Tian Chan's matter with the 2 girls. After all, there wasn't a need for it. One more person knowing would mean one more trouble for Tian Chan. It was better not to mention it. Chapter 4066. Right, I said he's a bad guy. Junior brother, you did a good job. Shangguan Laner chimed in. She suddenly paused and pinched the little curly bear's neck, saying, "You're a foodie. Why can't you change your bad habit of licking all the dishes first? We haven't touched anything, but the dishes on the table are all covered with your saliva. How can we eat?" The little curly bear was caught off guard and choked. As soon as Shangguan Laner loosened her grip, he immediately spat out the food in his mouth all over the table, and then he burped with satisfaction. Lin Yi and the other two looked at each other, and were speechless. They stared at the little curly bear for a long time and said helplessly, "Let's order another table. I haven't eaten enough." Seeing the little curly bear's innocent expression, Ning Xuefei felt funny and distressed. She quickly helped him out and changed the topic, saying, "Since you're so familiar with me and little Lon or Lin Yi, why don't you be our tour guide and show us around in the next few days? I've long heard that there are many scenic spots in the North Island. Although I've been here many times before, I always come and go in a hurry and never have a good time. I'd like to, but I'm a newcomer in the Welcome Pavilion. According to the rules, I can't go out at will," Linny said with a wry smile. Although he had this eldest senior brother, who was now in charge to help him bear the burden, and secretly disappear for a while to look for the king of scrap weapons, it was not a big deal. At most, people would think that he was hiding in the cave for closed-door training. However, if he swaggered out with the two young ladies to play, it would be too eye-catching. "What should we do? Little Lon, do you have any good ideas?" Ning Xuefei turned to ask. Although she was the princess of the West Island, every place had its own rules. She was not the kind of ignorant little girl who took herself as the center of everything and didn't care about the life and death of others. "Well, let me think." Shangguan Laner rolled her eyes and patted her head, saying, "It doesn't matter. I've got an idea. As long as my grandfather arranges a position for you, they can't say anything about you." "Position? What position?" Linny asked with a strange expression. "I don't know. Anyway, I will definitely let Grandpa think of a way. This problem will be left to him to worry about, hee. Shangguan Laner said indifferently. "All right." Linny could only nod in agreement speechlessly. As for the casting, he could only put it aside for a couple of days. Anyway, the king of junk had said that it might not be a bad thing to maintain it for a longer period of time, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Since they were scared by Si Haishao before, the two girls did not have the mood to continue playing today. After having a meal with Lin Yi, he quickly returned under the protection of the 5 Soaring Sky Pavilion core disciples. Early the next morning, a transfer order was suddenly sent to the Welcoming Pavilion. Everyone in the Welcoming Pavilion was shocked. The newcomers of the 3 great pavilions were all gathered together to listen to their orders. Everything was done in a very formal manner. There was a deacon who was in charge of conveying the orders of the Elders Guild, who personally appeared and accompanied him. And there was Hu Yinfeng with a pale face. After a meeting of the Elders Guild of the North Island, Lin Yi of the Welcoming Pavilion is appointed as the reception deacon of the West Island. He is in charge of receiving Miss Ning, a guest from the West Island. He is also responsible for all the matters of her travel in the North Island. If she encounters any problems, she can act at her own discretion without asking for additional instructions. The deacon read the transfer order in public. As soon as the words came out, there was an immediate uproar. Even Hu Yinfeng had an indescribable look of astonishment on his face. Reception deacon of the West Island? What kind of position is this? I have never heard of it before. The point was that it was personally appointed by the Elders Guild, and he had the right to act at his own discretion. It didn't sound simple at all. Under the envious eyes of the crowd, Lin Yi received the transfer order, but he was secretly speechless. Shanghai Tianhua, the top tycoon, is really leisurely and carefree. He actually thought of such a unique title for me. It can be said that he took a lot of effort. However, just as Lin Yi took the transfer order and was about to turn around and leave, the deacon suddenly said, "Little brother Lin Yi, wait a minute. I have a private letter from Pavilion Master Shangguan here. Please take it with you." Boom! The crowd was even more excited. Shanghai Tianhua, the pavilion master of the Rising Pavilion, actually gave a private letter to a newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. The weight of this letter is more enviable than the inexplicable transfer order just now. Damn it, how many generations of good fortune does Linny have? Most of the newcomers were just watching the fun, but Hu Yunfeng, the pavilion master of the welcoming pavilion, had a pitiful expression, as if he had eaten shit and had to savor it slowly. Shangguan Tianhua was a high and mighty peak-level existence. Even with his status as the pavilion master of the welcoming pavilion, it was difficult for him to even speak to him face to face, let alone form any sort of relationship with him. Just what had this Linny done to deserve such special treatment from such a powerful figure? Even Hu Yinfeng was in such a state. Kang Mingming, Morongzhen, and the other rivals who regarded Lin Yi as a thorn in their side were so shocked that they couldn't speak for a long time. Although the sun was still shining brightly, their hearts had already fallen into an ice cellar, frozen into a pile of frozen lumps. Linny didn't care about this group of people who were so depressed that they vomited blood. After receiving the private letter from Shanghai Tianhua, he turned around, walked to an empty place, opened it, and read it carefully. Linny, this old man thinks that you're smart and dependable. You have a lot of potential, and this training is a rare opportunity. I hope you'll do your best and protect the princess. Be a qualified personal bodyguard for the Island Flower. Close master of the Island Flower? The last sentence in the letter made Linny spit on the spot. He felt that he was born to do this. Wherever he went, he had to do this work. It was like this in the secular world. And now he was on the Heaven Stage Island, but he still couldn't escape this fate. As soon as he finished reading the letter, the gathered newcomers were in an uproar again. Linny looked up and saw Shanghai Laner and Ning Xuefei, two little beauties with powerful backgrounds, smiling sweetly and waving at him not far away. With the Princess of West Island in one hand, and the Princess of Chongtian Pavilion in the other, looking at the backs of Lin Yi and his companions, people in the welcoming pavilion were completely petrified. They all sighed in their hearts. As a newcomer, he should learn from Lin Yi. He is a real winner in life. If we can't find a strong backer, I think we can give up on Lin Yi. Meng Tong sighed faintly behind the crowd. Chapter 4067. Just like what Meng Tong had said, at least for now, they were no longer a threat to Lin Yi. Even if they did not give up, they could only swallow their anger for now. Bringing two beauties to tour the North Island, in the eyes of anyone, was a heavenly task. Lin Yi, on the other hand, did not have such dirty thoughts. However, he had been on the Heaven Stage Island for more than half a year, and he had never had such a good time. It could be considered as a rare relaxing experience after cultivating hard. However, just as Lin Yi was accompanying the two ladies to tour around, a piece of heavy news suddenly spread throughout the North Island, becoming the new topic of conversation after a meal. The former manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Si Haishao, who had molested the two princesses in public, had now become the manager of the Central Chamber of Commerce, after he was abused into a cripple. His meridians were all broken, and he was forever removed from his position by the Hong Chamber of Commerce. How could he be promoted so quickly? This Si Haishao doesn't look like much. How could he be so capable? Linny could not help but be puzzled. Such a bad old bastard. There are actually people willing to hire him as a manager. Is this Central Chamber of Commerce sick? Shanghai Laner said angrily. Even if she was simple and did not hold a grudge against Si Haishao, it would be strange for her to be happy when she suddenly heard this kind of news. Ning Xuefei also frowned, but said with some doubt, Central Chamber of Commerce? This name sounds familiar. It seems to be in the limelight recently. I don't know why, but I also feel the same way. Linny also frowned. He did not know what Central Chamber of Commerce was, but this word made him feel like he had heard it before. Although the three of them were surprised and puzzled, they were having fun and did not pay too much attention to it. Si Haishao had already paid a heavy price previously. As long as he did not provoke them again, he was just an unrelated passerby. At the same time, the two brothers Nan Tianba and Nan Tianmen were beating their chests and stamping their feet. What a waste of alcohol. Si Haishao had such a good backer. He had just gotten a little closer to him. But now he was pushed to the bottom. Not only had they lost a backer, but they had also been severely reprimanded by their uncle, Nantian Aurora, in his letter. Si Haishao was someone he had paid a huge price to finally raise to his current position. Just because these two fellows had brought him to a brothel to have fun, they ended up playing with him until he became an idiot with overflowing sperm. This was great. All his previous efforts had gone to waste. He had wasted an astronomical amount of spirit jades. Not even a sound was heard. Just as the two brothers were regretting their decision, they did not expect to receive such a piece of news. Si Haishao had miraculously regained his position in the blink of an eye. When Nan Tianba and the Southern Heaven Gate received the news, they immediately made their way to the newly opened Central Chamber of Commerce. As expected, they saw the high-spirited Si Haishao. Manager Si. We've finally found you. We haven't been able to find you for the past 2 days, and we've been extremely worried. Nan Tianba and the Nan Tian Min brothers rushed over with faces full of joy. Were you really looking for me everywhere? Si Haishao's expression turned cold. The miserable experience from before had already become a shadow that he could not get rid of for the rest of his life. That was his most desperate and helpless moment. However, these two people did not show up from the beginning to the end. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. How could he not bear a grudge? Seeing this, the two brothers hurriedly explained, It's true. Speaking of this, it's all our fault. We shouldn't have brought you to that kind of place to get drunk. Otherwise, such a big thing wouldn't have happened. Actually, after sending you back to the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce the day before yesterday, the two of us also drank ourselves into oblivion. When we woke up, it was already yesterday evening. When we heard that something had happened to you, we searched everywhere for traces of you. However, we couldn't find you. Hearing the two of them say this, Si Haishao's expression became much more relaxed. He had already left with the mysterious person yesterday evening. It was normal for the two brothers to say that they couldn't find him. All right then, this old man will believe you for now. This matter will be over for now. Fortunately, this old man had the help of a benefactor. Otherwise, the two of you would probably have to collect this old man's corpse. Si Haishao was half afraid and half glad as he said this. Yes, shopkeeper Si, you're truly blessed by the heavens. Nan Tianba and Southern Heavenly Gate wiped away the cold sweat on their foreheads. They had finally tricked this old thing. With their way of doing things, they would always support the strong and trample on the weak. When Si Haishao was successful, they naturally wanted to get closer to him. As for whether Si Haishao came to look for him when he was in trouble, only they themselves would know. Seeing Si Haishao sitting on a specially made wheelchair, Southern Heavenly Gate asked with a face full of concern, Shopkeeper Si, how are your injuries? Do you want us to get some healing medicine for you? No need, this old man's injuries aren't too serious. I only broke a few meridians. I've already taken a 5th grade meridian unblocking pill. It's only a matter of time before I recover. You don't have to worry about me. Nan Tianba and Southern Heavenly Gate nodded and said, although these injuries can be healed, this old man must take revenge. Forget about the two girls. That Lin Yi is the main culprit that caused this old man's tragedy. If I don't take revenge, I'm not a man. Nan Tianba and Southern Heavenly Gate nodded and said, that's right. We must find a way to kill that brat Lin Yi. He's too despicable. However, I heard that he's always with Shanghai Laner and Ning Xuefei. He's also surrounded by the 5 experts from the Rising Sky Pavilion. It's not a good time to make a move on him. The future is long. Isn't it just a few more days? This old man still has this much patience. Si Haishao's eyes were filled with hatred. He then said, this old man has made a comeback, but I haven't had the time to celebrate. Apart from the two of you, I don't know anyone else on the North Island. Why don't we go for a drink and have some fun? Since Shopkeeper Si has given the order, we wouldn't dare to disobey. The two of them immediately smiled and said. The three of them immediately found a top-notch restaurant and chatted happily. However, this time, Si Haishao had learned his lesson. He didn't dare to mention anything about finding women again. After all, he was forced to take the poison. If he fooled around all day and didn't do anything serious, he would be finished if he angered the mysterious person behind him. You two are the local bullies of the North Island, so you have a deep understanding of all aspects of the North Island. I have a question to ask you. I don't know if you have ever heard of people with potential but evil intentions? Si Haishao said, weighing his words. Nan Tianba and Southern Heavenly Gate were stunned. They then blurted out, "Isn't that Yuja?" Chapter 4068. Si Haishao could not help but curl his lips. Yuja had already disappeared, and not even a shadow could be found. What was the use of mentioning him? He continued, "Is there anyone else other than him?" Southern Heavenly Gate frowned, and thought for a moment. Suddenly he slapped his thigh and said, "Yes, there's someone called Kong Ming Ming in the welcoming pavilion. Some time ago, because I suspected that he was Lin Air, I specially observed this person. He's very sinister and full of evil tricks, but he has some brains. Rumor has it that this kid is vengeful. Even when the newcomers fight in the arena, he will use underhanded methods. Many people have been tricked by him." "Oh, that's interesting." Si Haishao's eyes lit up when he heard this. Southern Heavenly Gate laughed. "What's even better is that this guy is the same as us. He is also a mortal enemy of Lin Yi. His hatred is not shallow." Si Haishao was even more satisfied. He immediately said, "That's great. Then I'll trouble you to arrange for this person to meet me. I have great use for him." Although Southern Heavenly Gate did not understand, since Si Haishao had said it, he had no reason to refuse. He immediately set off for the welcoming pavilion. During this period of time, Kong Ming Ming had not been doing well. It could even be said that it was the worst period of time since he came to the Heavenly Stage Island. Not only was he defeated by Lin Yi last time, but now that he had lost his backer, Su Lingchong, as a new deacon, he had become somewhat awkward. The newcomers no longer took him seriously, and it was basically impossible for him to advance further. Even the pavilion master, Hu Yinfeng, had begun to distance himself from him. Recently, all the big and small matters had been handed over to the newcomers to manage, giving him fewer and fewer instructions. And for a position like his, once there were no missions, it meant that he had no power. He was not far from becoming a transparent person. He could only watch helplessly as Lin Yi latched onto a super thick thigh like Shanghai Tianhua, while his own situation was deteriorating. If this continued, it was almost certain that he would be stepped on by Lin Yi. Kong Ming Ming was currently surrounded by a sense of crisis. However, he had no idea how to deal with it. Coincidentally, the Southern Heavenly Gate had come knocking on his door. It was as if someone had sent him a pillow, just as he was about to doze off. However, as much as Kong Ming Ming believed that this was a rare opportunity, he still called Pinliang along for safety's sake. If something happened, he'd at least have someone to cover for him. Pinliang, on the other hand, wanted to see what these people were up to. He agreed without hesitation and followed them. He brought the two of them to the restaurant. To put it nicely, the meeting between Kong Ming Ming and Si Haishao was like old friends at first sight. To put it bluntly, they were birds of the same feather. After Kong Ming Ming's flattery, the atmosphere at the table immediately became harmonious, and the two sides talked happily. "I heard that you guys have a grudge with Lin Yi as well." Si Haishao finally brought up the matter at hand. "That's right, shopkeeper Si, you don't know. Lin Yi and I have a blood feud, and so does brother Zhong. Our grudge can't even be finished in 3 days and 3 nights. Kong Ming Ming said bitterly. "That's perfect. We are on the same side. The enemy of an enemy is a natural ally. Xiaoming, if you're willing to surrender to me, that's fine. If you want me to protect you in the future, that's fine too, but you have to do something first. You need to prove your loyalty to us, right?" Si Haishao squinted his eyes and smiled. Kong Ming Ming was overjoyed when he heard this, but he was a little troubled. I won't hide it from you, Manager Si. A while ago, we took the initiative to find trouble with Lin Yi. We wanted to eliminate him in one fell swoop, but the result wasn't what we wanted. He dodged it. Seniors Nan can also testify to this. Si Haishao glanced at Nan Tianba and Southern Sky Gate. Seeing the two brothers nod their heads, he said indifferently, "Since you've already failed, it can't be considered a proof of loyalty. Since you guys could mess with him once before, you can naturally mess with him again now. What do you think?" But these days, he's been with the two misses. If we want to deal with him face to face, it won't be easy. After all, we're just rookies in the welcoming pavilion. Doing this is no different from courting death. I hope Manager C can understand this, Kong Mingming said with a bitter face. That may be the case, but if we can't deal with him face to face, can't you think of another way? If you don't even have this much ability, even if I accept you, what's the use? Si Haishao curled his lips and said, "This old thing. He wouldn't release the eagle until he saw the rabbit." Kong Mingming thought to himself. Then he thought of something and said, "I've thought of a way. Last time we went to mess with Lin Yi, he seemed to be forging. Now that he's busy playing with the two misses, he definitely won't have time to care about that place. What do you think, Manager C?" Si Haishao's eyes lit up when he heard this. He stroked his beard and said, "Not bad, this is a rare opportunity. Once something like forging starts, it can't be stopped. Even if he's not here, the forging will still continue. If you guys take this opportunity to mess with him, even if you can't do anything to him, you'll still make his heart ache. Then it's decided. As long as you do this well, it'll be your proof of loyalty. In the future, I'll take good care of you. You'll be able to achieve great success." "Okay, I'll leave now. Just wait for my good news, Manager C," Kong Mingming said excitedly. Chapter 4069. Damn! When did Lenny get such a helper? Fortunately, I was cautious enough to prepare the alchemic fire bomb in advance. Otherwise, today's effort would have been in vain. Kong Mingming spat with lingering fear. Pinliang, on the other hand, was speechless as he looked at the trash king on the ground. He didn't even know that the two of them had snuck in like that. Wasn't this guy a little too unwary? He was knocked out by Kong Mingming with just one move, and Pinliang didn't even have a chance to sneak up on him. While Pinliang was thinking, Kong Xiaoming had already stepped past the king of junk and reached the edge of the pool. He looked at the strange lump of metal in the middle of the pool and smiled coldly. "This is the weapon Lenny is crafting, right? I heard he even asked Hongzhong to get him a lot of valuable materials. Let's take this thing away today. Don't you think it'll hurt him to death?" Before Pinliang could say anything, Kong Xiaoming reached into the pool and fished out the lump of metal. The pool looked as calm as a pool of stagnant water, so there wasn't much of a threat to it. However, right after that, Kong Mingming's expression changed abruptly. Roar! A hoarse and miserable howl instantly penetrated the entire cave. Even the birds in the forest outside were startled and flew away. Fish! Accompanied by a scalp-numbing sizzling sound, a layer of skin on Kong Mingming's hand was burned off. His hands swelled like carrots at a speed visible to the naked eye. He hurriedly let go, and the iron lump fell on his feet with a bang. Another layer of skin was burned off. Don't be fooled by the forging pool's lukewarm appearance, as if it was no different from an ordinary pool. However, the temperature inside was not something a human could endure. Even if he was a foundation establishment expert, his body was still made of flesh and blood. In the eyes of experts, Kong Mingming's action was purely a case of an old man hanging himself. He was tired of living. "It's so hot. It was scalding. It was scalding." Pinliang didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he watched Kong Mingming rolling on the ground. He was still thinking of a way to deal with this situation. He didn't think that the idiot would fall into the trap of his own accord. This was good, he didn't even have to think. Without another word, Pinliang grabbed Kong Mingming's ankle and dragged him out of the cave. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Kong Mingming's screams finally subsided. He looked at Pinliang and said weakly, "What the hell was that? Why was it so hot?" Pinliang couldn't help but laugh inwardly. What else could it be? "What? Boss Lin Ming hand? You even dared to use your hands to directly take the things in the forging pool. Even with your stupid intelligence, it was truly shocking." But on the surface, Pinliang's eyes rolled as he analyzed. Xiaoming, I suspect that this is a trick Lin Yi prepared for us. He used to do this all the time, pretending to be lax to lure us in. Think about it. After what happened last time, this place is obviously exposed. If it were you, would you still stay here to forge? Kong Mingming paused and shook his head decisively. Of course not. If it were me, I would have moved a long time ago. I wouldn't stay here and be targeted by others. That's why he should have moved a long time ago. That's why he made this piece of junk to lure us here to destroy it. This is exactly what he wants, Pinliang said confidently. That's right. I was suspecting that this piece of junk doesn't look like a weapon at all. It's a trap. Lin Yi is really cunning. He even got someone to guard this place, making it sound like this piece of junk is something good. I wouldn't have fallen for it otherwise. Kong Mingming cursed angrily. He was the same type of person. When he analyzed Lin Yi, he naturally had the worst of intentions. He didn't know that he was the one who brought this upon himself. There was only one real reason. He was too stupid. Seeing that Kong Mingming had taken the initiative to explain himself, Pinliang happily agreed. The two returned to the restaurant and reported to Si Haishao. Si Haishao was stunned when he saw that Kong Mingming had bandages all over his body. He looked like he was seriously injured. You were beaten up by Lin Yi? No, Manager Si, I was tricked by him. Kong Mingming started complaining with tears and snot. In summary, it wasn't that he didn't do his best. It was just that Lin Yi was too cunning. After listening to Kong Mingming's story, Si Haishao, Nantiamba, and the others looked at each other. But thinking about it carefully, Kong Ming had his reasons for being tricked this time. If he didn't make Kong Mingming hand over his proof of loyalty, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to trick people like this no matter how cunning he was. Fine. Although you didn't succeed this time, even if you didn't make any contributions, you still worked hard. This old man has seen your sincerity. Consider this your proof of allegiance. In the future, this old man will naturally protect you, Si Haishao said coolly. Kong Mingming was overjoyed. He patted his chest and said, Thank you, Manager Si. If you need anything in the future, I will go through fire and water without hesitation. Very good. Let's see what you do next. Si Haishao nodded in satisfaction before turning to Pinliang. Xiaoming is under me now, and I've acknowledged him. But you, Pinliang, I can't just take you in just because you're Xiaoming's friend. You have to contribute something, or you'll have to be put on probation. Pinliang nodded in satisfaction before turning to Pinliang. Pinliang thought about it, and pretended to be troubled. Manager Si, I also went to destroy things just now. It's just that Xiaoming was in front. He was scalded the moment he picked up the metal lump. I could only save him first. I didn't have a chance to show off. That may be the case, but I treat everyone equally. Xiaoming suffered so much before I accepted him. If you want me to accept you as well, you can't have no contributions at all. Si Haishao shook his head. That's right. This old man wasn't easy to fool. Pinliang was secretly panicking. These people were obviously targeting boss Lin Yi. If he didn't find a way to sneak in now, it would be very difficult to get inside information about them in the future. Suddenly, Pinliang's eyes lit up. Right, Manager Si. Aren't you looking for people with bad intentions but potential? I happen to know one, and it's a rare beauty. Chapter 4070. As expected, as soon as Si Haishao heard the word beauty, although he was still sitting in a wheelchair and had yet to recover from his injuries, he became visibly excited. He quickly asked, Oh, what beauty? Quickly tell this old man. Zheng Pingliang smiled and said, Her name is Murongzhen. She's a newcomer in the welcome pavilion just like us. She also has a grudge against Lin Yi. She was with us when we went to deal with Lin Yi. There's such a thing. Isn't she a natural ally? Si Haishao was even more elated. He immediately said, Pinliang, hurry up and invite this lady Morong over. If she can satisfy me, I will remember that you have done a great deed. Got it. Pinliang answered and left, leaving Kong Xiaoming looking like he'd just eaten shit. During this time, Morongzhen had always been Kong Mingming's favorite. Although he failed to deal with Lin Yi, he was still satisfied with Morongzhen's service. This coquettish woman was much better than ordinary women. She was also a master at the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment. Conquering her in bed was a different kind of pleasure. But now, Zhong Pingliang wanted to introduce her to Si Haishao. Fuck, I didn't take the initiative to share with him. Does he have to disgust me like this? Kong Xiaoming cursed at Pingliang in his mind, but he didn't dare show it on his face. It was pointless to say anything else now that things had come to this. He could only swallow his pride and accept it. Soon, Morong Zhen's coquettish figure appeared before everyone's eyes. Si Haishao almost couldn't hold himself back when he saw her natural seduction. He swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva and hurriedly said, "This old man is Si Haishao. I'm the manager of the Central Chamber of Commerce. I've long heard of Miss Morong's beauty. You're indeed a beauty. How pitiful." Si Haishao couldn't be blamed for losing his composure. He was a lustful man. He had no resistance to women's charms. Otherwise he wouldn't have made such a stupid mistake. Since he came to the North Island, he had only been taken to a brothel by Nan Tianba and Nan Tianmen once. And the women he played with were just ordinary women. Morong Zhen, a naturally seductive expert in the foundation building realm. There was no comparison at all. Manager C really knows how to speak, praising me until I'm embarrassed. Morong Zhen pretended to be shy as she covered her mouth and smiled. She then glanced at the crowd from the corner of her eyes and said in a coquettish manner, "I'm tired from walking such a long distance on such a hot day. Shopkeeper C, are you so heartless to not even arrange a seat for him?" As a veteran, Si Haishao understood Morong Zhen's seductive gaze. He gestured to the southern heavenly gate beside him to give up a seat, and said with a lecherous smile, "Lady Morong, you must be tired from your journey. Why don't you sit next to me? This seat is specially prepared for you." Manager C, you really know how to dote on me. I'm embarrassed. Morong Zhen smiled tenderly, and immediately sat down beside Si Haishao. Her petite body naturally leaned close to him. Seeing Si Haishao's lecherous expression, Kong Mingming couldn't help but curse in his mind. Morong Zhen really was a slut that could be slept with by anyone. She even threw herself at an old man like him. She had no morals at all. Kong Mingming, however, had forgotten that Morong Zhen had slept with him back then. She was only interested in his backer. For this kind of woman, Qin Feng was not a match for her. For a woman like her body was just a capital. As long as the opportunity was right, she could use it for a trade at any time. Pinliang, I'm very pleased that you were willing to introduce Lady Morong to me this time. I'll remember that you've done a great job. Work hard in the future. I have high hopes for you. Si Haishao praised Zhong Pinliang as he enjoyed Morong Zhen's flirtatious behavior. This time, Kong Mingming was even more depressed. It seemed like Si Haishao favored Zhong Pinliang even more, and he himself had to settle for second place. As for Morong Zhen, there was even less of a chance for him to compete. Accompanying Ning Xuefei and Shangguan Laner to play around, Lin Yi, the island beauty's personal expert, was in a much better mood than Kong Mingming. However, he didn't completely forget about his business during the play. He brought the two girls to the Hong Merchant Association again. This time, without Si Haishao's obstruction, Lin Yi successfully bought most of the supplementary materials listed by King of Junk. He even got one of the two rare materials that King of Junk mentioned that required luck. However, the last one was nowhere to be found. The appearance-growing mushroom was a spiritual medicine that looked very similar to Ganoderma. At the same time, it was a rare material for forging weapons. According to King of Junk, the 5 elements during forging were different from the normal 5 elements. The process of forging weapons was the reverse of the 5 elements. Therefore, the key to perfectly harmonizing the attributes of the materials depended on the appearance-growing mushroom. However, the appearance-growing mushroom was as rare as the heart-devouring exquisite grass. More importantly, once it was harvested, it had a very short lifespan and would easily wither and become useless. Therefore, unless a special reservation was made, even a large merchant association, like the Hong Merchant Association, wouldn't be able to stock it. It was the same for other merchant associations. Fortunately, Lin Yi wasn't in a hurry. After making a reservation at the Hong Merchant Association, He specifically went to find Chen Heihu and asked him to help him buy it. It was only then that Ning Xuefei finally realized what was going on. She asked doubtfully, Lin Yi, so you're not a waiter from the Hong Merchant Association? Of course not. The newcomers in the welcome pavilion don't work part-time outside. As for the reason why I went to the northernmost island with Hong Zhong last time, it was only because I had a good relationship with him. I never said I was a waiter from the Hong Merchant Association. Lin Yi shrugged. Then why did you ask me to ask Hong Zhong for elixirs last time? I thought you were from the Hong Merchant Association. Ning Xuefei pouted. Lin Yi smiled and said, Actually, I refined those elixirs myself. However, it was true that he was from the Hong Merchant Association. Ah, is this for real? So many elixirs were refined by you? Ning Xuefei's eyes widened. At that time, the Hong Merchant Association was pushed aside by a few other merchant associations. They couldn't bring out any decent items for auction, so I helped Hong Zhong. That's how I got those elixirs. Lin Yi explained lightly. Chapter 4071. At this time, Shengguan Laner interrupted and said, So, the highest grade elixir that you gave me as a birthday gift last time was also refined by you, junior brother? Yes. Lin Yi nodded and admitted, there was no need to hide this kind of thing from the two of them. You can even refine the highest grade elixir so easily. I didn't expect that you, Lin Yi, are such a powerful alchemist. Ning Xuefei's face was full of admiration. She suddenly said, By the way, I heard that there is a kind of elixir that can directly improve one's strength. It's called the Foundation Establishment Elixir. You can directly upgrade after eating it, unlike the Foundation Establishment Barrier Breaking Elixir, which can only be used to break through the barrier. I wonder if you can refine it. You also know about the Foundation Establishment Elixir? Lin Yi was slightly surprised. Looking at the Heaven Stage Island, the Foundation Establishment Elixir was an extremely rare and precious elixir. Even in a big chamber of commerce like the Hong Chamber of Commerce, it was rare. That's right. Ning Xuefei proudly raised her neck. This is a good friend of mine told me about it. I can try, but I can't guarantee that I will succeed. Lin Yi did not make any promises. That's great. Ning Xuefei suddenly became excited and said, I have collected a lot of materials for refining the Foundation Establishment Elixir. Let's refine it together. Then after refining, the three of us will divide it. But I want 2 portions, and I have to bring one for my good friend. Okay, no problem. Lin Yi nodded and agreed. Since Hong Zhong went to Middle Island, he lost a reliable channel to purchase the heart-devouring exquisite grass. In the future, if he wanted to refine more Foundation Establishment Elixir, he could only wait for the news from Chen Heihu. He was a little worried about this recently. He did not expect that Ning Xuefei would actually help him in his time of need. But, according to Lin Yi's estimations, even with Ning Xuefei's high status as the daughter of the West Island's master, she wouldn't be able to collect too many ingredients in private. After all, the heart-devourer exquisite grass was extremely rare, and it wasn't something that could be collected easily. However, after a few days, Ning Xuefei sent someone to deliver a large basket full of materials. This really shocked Lin Yi. After a rough estimation, there were actually at least 10 sets of materials inside. Even with Lin Yi's mental fortitude, he was still shocked by this scene for a long time. Comparisons were odious. Lin Yi couldn't help but marvel. How did Ning Xuefei collect all these? This time, Lin Yi could not help but feel a surge of emotions. After some preparation, he was about to start refining the pill. However, the 2 ladies, Ning Xuefei and Shengguan Laner, came to him at this time and said in unison, We want to watch you concoct pills. We want to protect you. This sudden bizarre request simply made Lin Yi not know whether to laugh or cry. Of course, he knew that the 2 of them did not have any malicious intentions, and were sincerely good to him. They didn't mean to harm him. They wanted to see him concoct pills purely for fun, but if they did that, the secret of his divine armament cauldron would be exposed. After pondering for a long time, Lenny finally decided to agree and warned, "That's fine, but you can't tell anyone about me concocting pills. Can you guarantee that?" Of course. This is a secret between the three of us." Ning Xuefei and Shangguan Laner immediately high-fived excitedly to celebrate. "Little junior brother, your cave residence is too small. Let's go to my Hualan house to refine pills. It's more spacious there, and no one will disturb us," Shangguan Laner suggested. "All right." Lenny nodded. In terms of external environment, Hualan House was the #1 residence in Soaring Pavilion after all, and it was indeed more reliable than his cave residence. Carrying a large basket full of elixirs, the three of them came to Hualan House and immediately entered the practice room, specially for Shangguan Laner to cultivate. They began to prepare to start concocting pills. Seeing Lin Yi take out the divine armament cauldron, Ning Xuefei's eyes suddenly lit up, and she said in surprise, "Lin Yi, your alchemy furnace seems to be a little different from others." Although she was not an alchemist, she had seen others concoct pills before. However, she had never seen such a strange part like a tablet on someone else's alchemy furnace. Of course, she didn't know that it was a tablet. Lin Yi smiled and said, "The divine armament cauldron can automatically concoct pills. It's the only one in the world, and you can't see it anywhere else." After searching for the formula for the foundation building pill and putting the elixirs in, the tablet said, "Please wait a moment. Jing is calculating the time and temperature curve for Lin Yi and will automatically generate the alchemy script." "Wow, that's amazing." Ning Xuefei's eyes turned into little stars. Her admiration for her best friend, Han Jingjing, was like a surging river. She was even more confident about the automatic casting mechanism that Han Jingjing was now developing. However, Shanghai Laner asked in surprise, "Little junior brother, who is Jingjing? Is she the name of your alchemy furnace?" "No, she's my girlfriend in the secular world," Lin Yi said with a warm smile. It wasn't just Han Jingjing. All the important women around him made him feel warmth from the bottom of his heart, and he was reluctant to part with them. "Oh, junior brother, it turns out that you have a girlfriend. You never told me about it." Shangguan Laner's eyes flashed, and then she asked, "Is she still in the secular world?" Lin Yi shook his head and sighed. "No, she also came to the Heaven Stage Island, but she was not transmitted to the North Island. I don't know which island and which sect she is in now." Since the last time he accidentally met Tian Chan on the extreme North Island, Lin Yi had been worried about this problem. Even Tian Chan had encountered such a big trouble. With Han Jingjing's strength, it should be more difficult for her to adapt to the complicated environment of the Heaven Stage Island than Tian Chan. He didn't know how she was now. "Hey, Fei can help you. She is the real princess of the West Island. She may not know other places, but if your girlfriend happens to be in the West Island, she will be able to find it. Fei, am I right?" Shanghai Laner suggested. When Lin Yi heard this, he suddenly had hope. He turned his head and looked at Ning Xuefei expectantly. Han Jingjing was a woman. According to the situation that most of the female cultivators on the Heaven Stage Island were concentrated in the West Island, the possibility of her being transmitted to the West Island was at least more than 60%. "Okay, I'll ask someone when I go back," Ning Xuefei promised vaguely. She did not directly tell them about Han Jingjing's current situation. She wanted to give them a big surprise. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.